Return to the past with a warehouse. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251. Young people from the neighboring county. Considering that Kao herself called her mother, it was a good thing for the little girl to have a normal family. Liju accepted the lamb wine and pig's head from Foodad, saying that it was the ransom money paid by Foodad. At this time, Liju couldn't say that Zio Kao was not bought back, but taken away directly, so he had to accept the wine and meat. However, he found an opportunity to ask the kitchen to prepare a banquet with the wine and meat to entertain guests, and shared it with Fu's family, the mute, Sanjiu, etc. It was already very late at this time, and it was not an exaggeration to regard this meal as the beginning of the end of the year. Those at this table were all Mr. Lee's confidants, and they all knew some of Mr. Lee's harmless secrets. After the meal, it was time for the second round of harvest in Lee Garden. The second crop of Lee Garden was basically cash crops, mainly cotton, flax and oil crops, while others still planted grain. The second crop of grain harvest was much worse than the first crop, only about 40% of the grain in a normal year, but even this 40% was enough to feed many more people. Moreover, the extra grain will be exchanged by people for goods to improve their living standards. Only the money in circulation is valuable and can revitalize the economy of a place. Liju taught this economics class to Huang Zhi, Leo Wu, and Fu Xiaogi, but they did not remember it as deeply as they followed the complete process of money circulation in person. In addition to Qingshan County, some good news came from other places one after another. First, the new county magistrate of Yu County took office. He was a descendant of a hereditary military noble family and spent money to get in. He himself did not make any progress in the imperial examinations, but he was a very good doctor. As soon as he arrived in Yu County, he dealt with the grain merchants who wanted to lower the price. Because he was a direct descendant of the Zhang family in the capital, even the governor of Huajia County was unwilling to control him. He, a dragon crossing the river, actually suppressed the local snake. Regardless of whether this matter is good or bad for Qingshan County, it seems that it is at least good for the people of Yu County. This county magistrate Zhang did not take action against the grain merchants entirely for the sake of justice and impartiality. The main reason was that his family was used to being rich and looked down on the tribute of more than 100,000 silver coins a year from the grain merchants. Instead of eating this little tribute, it would be better to seize their property and take over the business. Although County Magistrate Zhang was greedy for money, he had some sympathy for the poor and the weak. Coupled with that bit of hard work, the civilians under his rule had a much better life. However, this better life was ultimately exchanged for the lives of the people in his Hangshu village. Moreover, Liju helped them to avenge and publicized Chen Zhangyao's crimes, but it was Liju's personal action, not justice from the law and the system. It seemed that this revenge was full of the atmosphere of the rivers and lakes, and it was completely dependent on the personal will of the master. If there was one, there might not be two. If you meet such a person again next time, will Liju still know and intervene? Even Liju himself could not come up with an answer, so he could only take it one step at a time. County Magistrate Zhang wrote a letter, hoping that Qingshan County would consider the road to Yu County when building the road. They have many ports in Huajia County, and Yu County has one. Since there is a port, County Magistrate Zhang has some connections with the maritime customs, so maybe he can start a business going out to sea. At worst, even if their ports in Jiangnan are never unsealed, and they are never allowed to export, they can still go out to sea through inland waterways to Yu County. It is more convenient and cheaper to transport goods from the sea to the north than by land. Even if it is not as stable and safe as going north via the Grand Canal, it does not occupy the tight transportation capacity of the Grand Canal, and it does not have to be controlled by the Kao gang. It must be said that County Magistrate Zhang hit the mark on Liju's needs. The slow shipment of Li Yuan's precious goods to the sea is indeed restricted by transportation conditions. Now there are only two families selling things, dyeing and weaving Chen and Old Liu, one to the southeast and the other to the north. In total, they can only go out to sea once a year. if they want a second time, not to mention how to compress the round trip time. Even these merchants can't stand such a toss. Therefore, from last year to this year, Li Yuan only sells things once a year. Li Ju really needed such a port close to the sea, and County Magistrate Zhang happened to come to discuss it. The geographical location is close, the people are familiar, and the Zhang family has connections that can help pry open the port. Li Ju then consulted County Magistrate Wu and others, and County Magistrate Wu replied. County Magistrate Wu's letter said that this matter is very good, but the route, wages, materials and other matters need to be discussed in detail. As the parents of one side, they naturally cannot leave their posts without permission, so they each sent a group of county magistrates who can represent their opinions to meet and negotiate in the village at the junction of the two counties. County Magistrate Zhang did not expect to get such progress after only mentioning it once. He was overjoyed and hurriedly made an appointment to meet in Xiaobeishu village in February of the following year. After getting County Magistrate Wu's consent, Liu Zhang found his confidant and selected a team of people, explained his conditions clearly, and asked them to coax Liu Wu to agree to give priority to the construction of this road connecting Yu County. County Magistrate Zhang's confidant was the long-term attendant he brought from home. He followed Liu Zhang for decades and became a well-known second housekeeper from a servant. The long servant was naturally very careful and cautious after receiving the master's instructions, and he dared not be negligent at all. However, the long servant did not understand in his heart, it's just a road. If the master wants to build it, we can build it ourselves. Why ask them? If the master builds the road, the merits will be attributed to the master, isn't it better? Even the old lady and the wife will be happy. Old Zhang shook his head and said, why ask so many questions? Just do the job well, and don't act on your own. The long servant had to obey the order, and old Zhang had no intention of explaining. Building roads is indeed a good thing. It is not only to accumulate virtue, but also to revitalize the economy under his rule. Old Zhang has studied Li Yuan's miscellaneous knowledge a lot. He has a very thorough understanding of the circulating currency theory and economic activation theory proposed by Li Ju, and he believes in it. He will work in Yu County for at least 5 years. The total area of Yu County is so small. Even if he scrapes all the land clean, it will only be the silver, and it will not be good. But if he can multiply the overall production output of Yu County several times, he will be able to pluck a duck's fur coat from a passing goose. This is just the benefit of making money. Old Zhang has a second plan. The relationship between the old Zhang family and Li Ju is quite ambiguous now. They are flirting with each other, but they haven't said it clearly. The two Zhang Zubu are in the lead. They are in competition with Zhang Xianling. It's just that the two Zhang Zubu are just used to casting a net. Their old Zhang family believes in casting a wide net to catch more fish. Therefore, whoever they see has the potential for development. They want to grab it. Zhang Xianling is different. Zhang Xianling is a gambler. He believes in it's better to hit the golden bell once than to break the drum 3,000 times. He thinks that Li Ju alone is worth him putting his whole family on to win a more promising future. How can we miss such a good opportunity? Chapter 252. Li Ju does not have those worldly desires. What kind of friendship is the strongest in this world? Committing a crime together is the strongest. Everyone has a handle on each other, and no one dares to break the covenant. Magistrate Zhang himself has made no big mistakes, but Li Ju is not like that. It is difficult for ordinary people to find any mistakes in Li Ju's behavior. If you must say that the industry under Li Ju's name is mixed with men and women, which corrupts the atmosphere, it does seem like a crime, but it is not illegal, and it makes him a little more human. The road of holding a handle together is not feasible, and the second way is to have common interests. The most typical one is family marriage. Is it a simple match between children and a big family? Obviously there is a deeper family relationship in it. However, although Li Ju is unmarried, none of his sisters are unmarried. And he also heard that Li Ju is very ambitious. You must get a confidant before you can get married, and there will be no second colors after marriage, and it is the same, even if you have no children and no descendants. He also heard that there are many beautiful and intelligent women around him, and Li Ju was not shaken at all. It seems that the marriage will not be successful. Then the only thing left is the simplest interweaving of interests. If his interests become the interests of the other party, then the other party will have to consider his interests more. Li Ju is not short of money. No one knows how much he has in his hands. The large sparrow bell only sells for a few hundred taels in Jiangnan, but it can be doubled again when sent to the imperial capital and outside the pass. Li Ju can live freely just by selling inventory. Moreover, he has so many seeds in his hands that even His Majesty the Emperor is quite tempted. Liu Zhang invited himself to Jiangnan because he heard an unintentional sigh from his father, Zhang Zubu, who was the companion of the prince. He said that the trial planting of new grain in Huainan Road by Huangzhuang this year was 80% accurate, and the largest single ear of corn was estimated to weigh 7 taels. Liu Zhang discussed with his parents and wife. It happened that his family had already spent money to find him a supplementary official. Just a little arrangement was made to arrange this supplementary official in Yu County, Huajia County. The Ministry of Personnel was worried that this place was poor and bad, and there were constant threats such as pirates and typhoons. The performance of the county officials in the past was not very good, especially with Qingshan County as a comparison. Yu County seemed particularly difficult. Liu Zhang was willing to go, and the Ministry of Personnel was very happy to write a memorial for the proposed appointment and submit it. When the emperor saw it, he was surprised that the old man's treasure was finally willing to do something. With a stroke of his pen, Liu Zhang was appointed as the county magistrate of Yu County, and the matter was settled. It would take some time for the county magistrates to take over, but Liu Zhang was unwilling to wait for a moment. He took the transfer order and packed his luggage to Yu County the next day. When he arrived in Yu County, he dealt with the local tyrants who embezzled their property while thinking about how to achieve the goal of making Li Ju and his family share Wei Lun Wo. He has been restless all the way to Jiangnan. He has been refining the various things that Li Ju has done in the past 2 years, trying to find Li Ju's weaknesses. What ordinary people can't get over is wine, sex, money, and anger, but Li Ju has none of them. In addition to wine, sex, money, and anger, there is also the word power, which makes him even more unlike. If he wanted power, how could he be a local rich man in Qingshan County for 3 years? Last year, the emperor's reward was a nominal 5th rank title, but if one is determined to climb up, let alone good seeds, cement alone is enough to be the starting point of a political career. For example, if it were Zhang, he would offer cement, using the low price and applicability of cement as an excuse to enter the Ministry of Works and even the Ministry of Households. During this period, he used the copied romance of the Three Kingdoms and records of the Song Dynasty and Pinyin as a stepping stone to tie up the Imperial College and Zheng Shidao and others. Even if his villain mentality was discovered by these big guys, it would not matter. Xin Jiaxuan and Luo Guantan would be invincible and that would be it. With this group of big guys as a backing, and through the Queer Bell and Qingshan Satin, he could get a job in Jiangnan and release the 4 killer weapons of sweet potatoes, con, potatoes, and rapeseed. At most, he could enter the ranks of the 4th rank real positions in the 3rd year. Li Ju is only a nominal title now, and it was only with the help of Yu Yaoniang that he got this nominal title. If it weren't for the old husband sending seeds to the palace, and the queen happened to collect them and plant them, God knows where Li Ju would be now. So Li Ju had almost no weaknesses. People outside criticized him for being lustful, but that was just the beginning. He did organize a troupe, but he didn't do it to possess those beautiful actors. Didn't you see that Miss Qian Hong, the pillar of Dayan Club, was so sad that the literati in Jiangnan couldn't stand it? Those sour scholars even wrote a short song to defend the beauty and secretly criticized Li Ju, a rough man who didn't understand romance, for delaying Miss Qian Hong's flowering period. When Liu Zhang was at a loss, Director Wang gave him a hint. Director Wang was the director of the Ministry of Industry who was sent by His Majesty the Emperor to Qingshan County to collect folk songs. After the collection of folk songs, Director Wang resigned, saying that he cared about the mountains and rivers of Jiangnan, liked the literary style of Jiangnan, and wanted to be a teacher in Jiangnan, teaching and learning at the same time, and learning from each other. His Majesty the Emperor knew that these literati had the most bad habits. They always wanted to follow their own interests and not be attached to external things, to live in seclusion, to be free and unrestrained, to have a wife and children, and to be free and quiet. Director Wang at least mentioned the Jiangnan style of writing, which always saved his face. His Majesty the Emperor also agreed, so old Wang and old Zhang came to Jiangnan at the same time, and they traveled together for most of the journey. Old Zhang was famous for his smooth work and wide friends in the capital. Director Wang was a grassroots person, and was promoted by the Yu family after he passed the imperial examination. He still needed to make friends with the rich and wealthy, not to mention that Master Zhang was a dandy. Old Zhang was used to making friends, and Director Wang was happy to do so. The two hit it off, and said goodbye 200 miles south of Jinling. After the two settled down, they gradually exchanged letters. Mr. Zhang was the county magistrate, so Director Wang's letters could only be sent to the county government office, so they would naturally reach the county government. Director Wang's first letter came through the postal system. In the letter, he praised this folk postal system and other affairs of Qingshan County. There was also a package with the letter. Director Wang said that northerners might not be used to wintering in the south. According to his own experience, he equipped County Magistrate Zhang with some small items, including food and daily necessities, especially the fumigation cage for drying clothes, which was very important in the south. County Magistrate Zhang read Li Ju's weakness from Director Wang's letter. This person was not in a high position, but his heart was in a high position. It was not that he was not in the position, but was seeking politics, nor that he was too ambitious, but that his vision was beyond the secular world. How did that sentence go? The monk did not have these worldly wishes. Li Ju's weakness was those mortals in the world who were struggling to survive and live a better life. Based on this judgment, Liu Zhang tentatively proposed his own cooperation. He would pay the money. It was money extorted from the local area anyway, and the unscrupulous businessmen in Jiangnan were all fat as rats, and asked Li Ju to help clean up Yu County, starting with road construction. Chapter 253, The Wrath from the Imperial Capital. Liu Zhang had his own reasons for using road construction as an introduction. Li Ju liked to build roads. In order to promote cement, he first built a cement road for Qingshan County, and then recruited workers to build roads during the slack season. The cement road connected Shanyang and half of the villages and towns in Qingshan County. If Li Ju was not interested in this plan of joint road construction, Liu Zhang still had a backup plan, such as cooperating with Li Ju to sell things at sea, such as the quota and sale of salt and iron, etc. Li Ju directly agreed to cooperate in road construction, which saved him from the following matters. In fact, the following matters also had to be done, but they could be postponed a little. Li Ju did not intervene too much in Yu County's request. Yu County was a neighboring county, and the matters involved were political affairs. Li Ju had an idle and empty title, and he had no status or identity to intervene. County Magistrate Wu went to Li Ju to negotiate this matter. After getting Li Ju's promise, Liu Wu talked to people about the following matters. Magistrate Zhang was a little puzzled that Li Ju did not personally intervene. However, he was not a fool. He knew that Li Ju was the mastermind behind the road construction in Qingshan City. It was Li Ju who came to handle the negotiation between Yu County and Qingshan City. His goal was achieved, so there was no need to force Li Ju to negotiate. Both parties were willing, and the matter went smoothly. While Li Ju was concentrating on training his disciples in Jiangnan and preparing to expand his business in Jinling, the north was not idle either. Li Yuan's 3 kinds of grain were planted in the imperial farm this year. His Majesty valued this acre of land more than his eyeballs. The people under him were also conscientious and did not dare to slack off. Everything was done bit by bit according to the farming and planting methods passed down by Li Yuan. Light, temperature, water, and fertilizer were absolutely strict. The goose thermometer that Li Ju had just used in his greenhouse was also used in the imperial farm. Old Mr. Yu personally asked for it to be decorated and sent to the capital. The Sishianjian specially sent 3 people to learn how to use it. The 3 people took turns on duty every day and did not dare to miss anything. Perhaps it was because of the good sunlight conditions in the north this year, or perhaps it was because the imperial farm was well taken care of. The output of the imperial farm this year was not worse than last year, but close to the level of Li Ju's first trial planting. His Majesty the Emperor personally supervised the harvest, watched the weighing and storage, and finally believed that these three kinds of grains were indeed high yield, well adaptable, and not too picky about water and fertilizer. Last year's reward for Li Ju was a little short, and it was unfair to give him such good grains. This year, I will give him something more. This was the first thought that came to His Majesty the Emperor's mind when he saw the final harvest total. He was thinking about what to give him more awards, and Gaozi, the capable female official beside the Queen, came to ask for an audience with a happy face. His Majesty the Emperor was shocked to see her beaming with joy, thinking that the Queen was pregnant again. After some conversation, Gaozi's mother said, "Today, the eldest girl came to the palace to pay respect to His Highness, and told her mother that our eldest girl is pregnant. His Highness specially sent me to congratulate her." Gaozi's mother took care of Princess Chengyang. On weekdays, several old palace servants loved Princess Chengyang as their own daughter. In private, they always called her eldest girl and only used honorifics when talking to others. The eldest girl is pregnant here, of course, means that Princess Chengyang is pregnant. His Majesty the Emperor immediately chanted a Taoist name. He was a layman who did not believe in Buddhism or Taoism, but he actually chanted a Taoist name. You can imagine how happy he was at that time. Today is a double celebration. Although I'm the Emperor, I still like the joy of family. Lekang, the princess's nickname, has had many dissatisfactions since her marriage. How could I not know that? Finally, she has made it through. You told the Queen that I would naturally prepare gifts to send, and she only needs to prepare her own. Let the treasury prepare the necessary things. His Majesty the Emperor rewarded Gaozi's mother with a stroke of his pen. When Gaozi's mother walked out of the inner hall, he added, "You told the Queen and the eldest daughter that the name of the grandson should be left to me. No matter what the nickname, academic name, or full name, leave it all to me. You are not allowed to touch it. I want to give my little grandson the best name in the world." Gaozi's mother quickly agreed and went back to explain everything to the Queen. She smiled and said, "Sure enough, our eldest daughter is the most lovable. The most beloved child in His Majesty's heart is still our daughter. You see, His Majesty means that the little grandson is better and more precious." The Emperor's sons and daughters were not necessarily named by him personally. The names of several princes and princesses were found by the university scholar in a book. When he learned the news, the Emperor rarely showed such joy. Gaozi's mother compared other princes and princesses with Chengyang's unborn child, which was a bit disrespectful, but she accurately evaded the question. The Queen had other things on her mind and didn't bother to investigate. Gaozi's mother kept talking for a while, and when she looked up, she saw that the Queen's joy had disappeared. Princess Chengyang was peeling a fist-sized honey citron slowly, and there was no special expression. The nanny who said that Princess Chengyang was pregnant had disappeared, and many other palace maids were gone. Only the most trusted wet nurse Chen, wet nurse Tao, Yuring, Yingjiao, and Princess Chengyang's personal maid Ziking were left. "My two masters, what's wrong? Did the old slave say something wrong?" Gaozi's mother asked anxiously. The Queen almost rolled her eyes. "It has nothing to do with you. Let Lekang speak for himself. Sit up straight, follow your rules." Princess Chengyang moved lazily. "I can only relax a little with my mother now, and my mother still uses those rules to restrain me." After all, she handed the citron to Ziking to peel, and said while the palace maid washed her hands, "It's nothing. It's not me who is pregnant. It's a cousin of my husband. My mother-in-law wants me to acknowledge it, but I don't care about these things." I didn't expect that wet nurse to say it in front of everyone. I thought the whole palace should know it by now, and I really can't help but acknowledge it. The Queen's voice suddenly rose a degree. Since she married her husband, she had already gotten rid of 80% of the arrogance of her girlhood. Everyone in the harem praised the Queen for her gentleness, virtue, generosity and friendliness. But today, she rarely lost her temper and was really furious. "Can't you interrupt her or say she's joking? You're such a smart person. If you don't want to suffer a loss, who can make you suffer a loss? If you don't explain it to me clearly today, you can't leave the palace." Princess Chengyang was very single and took advantage of the situation. "Mother, if you want to keep me, that's fine too. I'll stay with you for 2 more days, and I'll leave when you calm down." Seeing that the mother and daughter were about to make another joke, Chen, Tao, Yaoniang and others who knew a little more than Gaozi's mother tried to persuade them. Some said, the girl, princess, must be feeling bad. Which girl would not feel distressed when she is wronged? If the queen says anything to her again, the eldest girl will have more grievances on top of the grievances she suffered in that family, and the queen will regret it again. Some said, the young master should also think about the master. It has been 3 or 5 years since the young master went to that family. The master still cries when she thinks of the young master at night. Why is the princess angry with the person who loves her the most? After much persuasion, she finally persuaded him to change his mind. The queen was still unhappy. She took a sip of tea, tapped the tea bowl, and said, "I will never let this matter go." Does he think it's as easy as a commoner marrying him? His family is not bullying the princess, they are slapping me in the face. Chapter 254. Not sad. The queen was sullen for a long time, but because Princess Chen Guiyang did not seem angry, she believed her daughter's words seriously. "Are you really not angry?" "I'm already angry. I'm angry that they did it without discussing it with me, and I'm even more angry that after I refused, they found someone to deliberately embarrass me. There is nothing else." Princess Chen Guiyang took the citron petals peeled by Ziking and ate them one by one with a golden carrying pole. The queen was not so calm. She called Ziking to her side and asked, "Who is the cousin of the prince consort that your master mentioned? What is her origin? How did she get involved with the prince consort? I always thought that the child was rough and stupid, but I didn't know he was so unbearable." Ziking looked at Chen Guiyang, who nodded his chin, and Ziking replied, "The master really didn't take it to heart, so he didn't want to bother the queen with it. That cousin's surname was Liu, and her given name was Shan. She is only 17 this year. She is indeed beautiful, with a gentle and kind temperament. She is the best at judging the situation and being humble. She was originally the mistress's niece from a distant place. Because the head of the family had passed away, she was brought to the capital by an old servant all alone. The prince consort liked her, and the mistress liked her too, so they took her in as a room, now calling her Miss Shana. They only cleared a room for her in the servant's room in the backyard, and she is pregnant. The mistress wanted to pretend that the child was born by the master, but the master didn't care, but hated her family for deliberately concealing the truth. She despised their mean behavior, so she didn't agree. What happened next, Ziking didn't say, but everyone knew it. It was the old mother of the Yang family who announced in public that the princess was pregnant, hoping to force the princess to admit it, and then she was dragged away by the queen. After hearing this, the queen was so angry that her teeth itched. "It's really outrageous. His family is so bold that they dare to plot against my son. Order someone to catch that girl. I want to see what kind of beauty she is. She dares to instigate her son-in-law to do such a shameful thing and asks Kanja to conceal it. Mother, don't." Chen Guiyang stopped her. "I really don't hate her. I mean Miss Shan. If this happened a few years ago, I might have complained about how such a blind thing dared to covet my son-in-law. But now I think it's not her fault. She is not a bad person." The head maid Yu Yaoniang said dissatisfiedly, "How can she not be a bad person? She is not doing her duty." "Princess, you have been wronged." The princess smiled and said, "Who is the bad guy? No one is a bad guy. I'm not wronged. Speaking of being wronged, it is the prince consort who is more wronged. Although I have never married the person I like, and have never experienced the touching emotions of husband and wife, at least I do not reject the prince consort. But the prince consort is different. He does not want to be a prince consort. He was forced to do it. Thinking of this, I'm embarrassed to blame him. As for Liu Shana," the princess paused for a moment, thinking back to the little girl, whom she didn't care about at all on weekdays. She has even less choice. Reincarnation is not her choice, and the death of her parents is not her own will. She has nowhere to go, and can only go to her distant aunt. This is a last resort. In the end, she was chosen by her aunt, and sent to the young master as a servant. She couldn't resist. She wanted to resist, but where could she go after she resisted? Without the protection of her relatives, she might not even be able to leave the capital alive. Mother, do you think I can blame her for not knowing how to say no? The queen was kind-hearted by nature, a gentle yet strong woman, who was never vindictive or narrow-minded. Princess Chengayang spoke to the queen in a gentle and detailed manner, and the queen could listen. But she could listen, but could not understand. My son, you are too tolerant. Why is the prince consort wronged? What's wrong with you? Or is it your father who treated him badly? He got a position of marquis for nothing without any literary or martial skills, and he still feels wronged? There is no one in the world who is not wronged. As for that little girl, she had 1,000 reasons to do so, and she shouldn't have secretly had an affair with someone else. The so-called no choice is just an excuse for being afraid of death. There are still stories of virtuous women who keep their chastity in the folks. She accepted the favor from you and the prince consort, so how could she harm you and the prince consort instead? In the eyes of the queen, the prince consort depends on the princess. It is said that the orphan girl adopted by the wife of the Taifu must actually be approved by the princess before it can be really implemented, and in the end it still depends on the princess's kindness and goodness. The orphan girl first received the princess's kindness, but turned around and climbed into bed. She is simply a traitor. The princess was still amiable and said, even ants try to survive, so who would want to die if they can live? Mother, I don't want to hide this from daddy. Mother Gao said that daddy already knows about it and is ecstatic. I don't know how to explain it to daddy so that he can calm down. The queen said unhappily, you were just giving a long speech. Why can't you convince your father? The princess smiled and said, since ancient times, only mother can control daddy. Why are you trying to coax me? Daddy pays the most attention to keeping healthy, so don't make him angry. Mother will help. Things have come to this, and now we can only make amends. After all, she is the apple of her eye whom she has loved for more than 20 years, and that one is her husband whom she loves and respects. No matter how angry the queen is, she has to find a way to cover up the matter. Just as she was worrying, His Majesty the Emperor came happily. His Majesty the Emperor walked in with a smile on his face, holding a boy carved from white jade in his hand. He lifted up the girl who was about to salute with one hand and said, my dear girl, there is no need to be polite. It is important to take care of your health. Come, take a look at this little sculpture I personally selected for you. Isn't it white, fat and cute? When my grandson is born, I will name him myself. His nickname is Shuangxi. What do you think? It is a bit cheap, but it is a double happiness. The princess wanted to say no, that's fake, but she hesitated when she saw her old father's rare and vivid expression. She couldn't even explain. In the end, the queen, who had many years of experience in comforting her husband, took over this mess. The queen carefully told her husband that the princess was not pregnant, but was tricked by the nanny of the Taifu family. The empress and others were prepared for the emperor's rage, but he didn't say a word for a long time. After a long time, he said to his daughter, are you sad? If you are sad, I will drag that unfaithful man out and chop him up. Princess Chengayang was stunned for a moment and replied, no, I'm not sad. I don't like him, so I can't be sad. The emperor still handed the white, plump, tender jade boy to his daughter and said, keep it. Since it's given to you, it's yours. When I have a grandson in the future, I'll still call him Shuangxi. There are some good news today. Since there is nothing else, accompany me to the imperial farm to see it with your own eyes. Just send a message to your family saying that you will not be going back recently and will stay in the palace. It was my idea. I think your family should have no other intentions. Ziking and the others hurriedly and happily agreed to work separately. The messenger rushed to deliver the message. The one who got clothes and jewelry for the princess to change her clothes went to the warehouse, and the one who prepared the travel ceremonies went to the internal affairs department to make arrangements. The stagnant atmosphere just now was immediately swept away. Chapter 255 What is the best reward? His Majesty's decision to visit the royal farm was not a whim, but it was indeed a spur-of-the-moment decision to take his daughter with him. Just as the preparations were being made, other princes and princesses came to pay their respects. When the little princess heard that His Majesty was going to inspect the royal farm, she remembered the new varieties of plants that had been moved out of the greenhouse this year, so she begged him to take her with her. Chen Guiyang had become increasingly close to the little princess over the past few months, so he couldn't help but help out. With a wave of his hand, His Majesty took all the children and their study companions to the royal farm. While the princes and princesses were changing their clothes, His Majesty raised his eyebrows and said, "We can't just let Awakens matter go like this. You, think of a way." The queen understood immediately. After the emperor led the people away, she asked someone to summon the princess's wet nurse Liu from the marquis's mansion, and asked Liu to tell her everything that happened in the marquis mansion without missing a single word. Liu had long been fed up with the Yang family's disrespect for the princess, but because of the princess's orders, she didn't dare to tell anyone, but she would only say a few sarcastic words to them on weekdays. After all, the Yang family had offended the princess and the emperor and empress thoroughly, and the empress told her to tell everything you know. Liu thought to herself, this is not my fault for not listening to the young master's orders. After all, the master's words are more important. So she told the whole story, especially the fact that the Teifu's wife forced the prince consort to take a concubine because the prince consort had no children, and then forced the princess to recognize the child of the housewife. She exaggerated the story, as if the Yang family had committed 10 heinous crimes. The empress would not believe it easily. She had been in the palace for so many years, and had learned how to hear the real things from other people's words. The general spring and autumn style of writing could not escape her. She could also roughly hear what Liu said was true, and what was false. From Liu's denunciation, the empress heard at least 3 things: the Teifu's wife's weird temper, the prince consort and the princess's cold respect, and the little cousin Liu Shana's pretentious behavior. If one only wants to vent the princess's anger, then reprimand, salary deduction, and reflection are all feasible. The little cousin is also easy to deal with, whether it is to grant marriage, grant death, or take her back to the palace. It is not difficult. But after the anger is vented, what should be done next? The princess and the prince consort are already as cold as ice to each other. If another person intervenes, how will they respect each other in the future? The princess is a high and mighty princess, but her happiness after marriage depends on whether the prince consort is sincere or not. They can protect the princess's dignity and pride, but they can't protect her true heart. Maybe Chen Guiyang is right. At that time, she should have chosen a prince consort who was good to her, instead of just seeing that the child was handsome and talented, and then deciding on him. Although I understand what Chen Guiyang meant by the prince consort is more wronged, it does not mean that the queen can understand what the prince consort did. The behavior of the prince consort seemed foolish to the queen. The supreme emperor gave the most precious pearl to his husband, but the husband thought the pearl was not good enough, and treated it lightly. It was incredible. On the other hand, it was easy to punish and vent one's anger, but it was difficult to take care of the princess's future life. The queen couldn't think of any particularly effective method for a while. She knew too well how the people below would secretly disobey. There were so many ways for a mother-in-law and a husband to make their daughter-in-law look glamorous on the surface, but complain bitterly on the inside. She could manage it for a day, a month, or a year, but could she manage it for a lifetime? Chen Guiyang on the other side didn't think so much. The emperor's imperial manor is a fertile land of thousands of miles, from the capital to Yanzhou, especially the part connecting the capital and Yanzhou, which is endless. The imperial manor where His Majesty the Emperor brought his children to relax today is located in the inner city of the capital, just under a mountain north of the imperial palace. The capital is mainly a plain area. It is rare to have such a small and short mountain to visit. From the middle of the mountain to the top of the mountain, there are carefully maintained gardens. In late autumn, a sea of deep red and red interspersed with orange and golden yellow is spectacular. The part from the foot of the mountain to the mountainside is farmland. The farmland that has been harvested is desolate. The eunuchs who take care of the farmland are composting and tidying up after harvesting according to the requirements of Li Yuan's agricultural book. The bare fields are naturally not worth seeing, and the composting area is even more filthy. Before they even get close, the pampered people are reluctant to show it, because they are afraid that the emperor will see their reluctance. Fortunately, the emperor did not plan to take the children to see those places. The most important thing to relax is to see something happy. If there is anything that makes people happy, it is of course a new grain harvested this year. Therefore, the direction where the emperor asked people to lead the way is actually the new grain that has been harvested and is being preserved. Some of the seeds harvested this year will be sent to the south for the second season of interplanting and summer sowing. The humidity in the south has a great impact on the storage of seeds. They have to dry and dehydrate the seeds and send them to the imperial farm in the south in May or June. His Majesty's emphasis on new grain seeds is obvious to all. The people in the imperial farm certainly serve carefully according to Yu Yaoniang's agricultural book, fearing any mistakes. If there is a problem, and it is found that they did not follow the book, they will definitely be in trouble. On the contrary, if they follow the agricultural book completely and something goes wrong, then the responsibility is certainly not on them. In order to achieve absolute accuracy, even thermometers and hygrometers are installed in this pre-processed granary. When the other princes and princesses were interested in the new seeds, Princess Yu Yaoniang was studying the principles of the thermometer and hygrometer. She was more experienced in physics, and she quickly figured out the principle of the thermometer, but she didn't understand the hygrometer at all. She knew that the invisible and intangible air contained water vapor, but how to express water vapor? Whenever Princess Yu Yaoniang couldn't figure something out, she would take out a small notebook and write it down, preparing to continue asking Li Ju for advice in the name of Changxi Sheng after returning. His Majesty the Emperor asked the eunuch in charge of this matter to introduce the situation of the granary in detail to the children. Turning his head, he caught a glimpse of Yu Yaoniang writing and drawing, and couldn't help but smile. "You are still the same as before, writing down everything you think of." Yu Yaoniang smiled brightly. "Among my sisters and brothers, I'm the dumbest. If I can't figure it out, I can only write it down and study it later." "Father, I just heard that this year's grain harvest is unprecedented." As expected, with Daddy here, the country's fortune is getting better year by year. His Majesty the Emperor was very happy to be coaxed by his daughter's 2 words. "This is the biggest happy event today." Originally, there was also the nickname I thought of, Shuangxi, which should be here, but unfortunately. Yu Yaoniang smiled again. "Even if it is true, a child is far from comparable to such a good harvest. I would rather he come a little later, so as not to share Daddy's joy during the harvest. My children will only be 1 or 2 ordinary children. How can they compare with the well-being of the people of the world? The good harvest of grain, but Daddy's country will be forever stable." His Majesty the Emperor was even more delighted. "Of all my children, I love you the most, because you understand me best, and have been like this for so many years. It's a pity." His Majesty the Emperor did not say what he regretted, but changed the subject and asked, "What do you think should be rewarded to Li Ju this year?" Last year, he gave him a farm with good land and an honorary title, the Minister of Agriculture. Now it has been proven that his grain is indeed good stuff, and the cement, newspapers, pinyin and other things have made our Daeong look brand new. It would be unreasonable not to reward him well. Chapter 256 Complaint. Princess Yu Yaoniang was also stunned for a moment as to what reward to give to Li Ju. She was the only person present who had read all of Li Ju's writings and even had countless exchanges with Li Ju himself. From a purely academic perspective, she might be the one who understood Li Ju the best, even more than Liao Huang, Liao Wu, and Xiao Fu. It was precisely because of this that Princess Yu Yaoniang was in a dilemma. Giving money, gifts, and beauties was meaningless, and it was really difficult to find a suitable gift. The group thought and walked at the same time. Half a day later, everyone inspected the new seeds in the granary. Princess Yu Yaoniang smiled and said to His Majesty the Emperor, "I have a new idea. Please don't blame me for listening to it." His Majesty the Emperor indicated that she could say it. The princess said, "Honor is honor." "Why? Li Baxio is not short of money, nor does he care about rare toys. I heard that he has always lived a simple life. That is, he lives a simple life among the rich and powerful. He does not like beauty, nor does he eat, drink, whore and gamble. Then there is only honor. My daughter thinks that he has so much wealth by himself, and he has neither brothers and sisters to help him nor a wealthy family to protect him. He is undoubtedly a child boasting in the market. If Daddy gives him an honor, Daddy does not need to spend the savings of the national treasury, but he is the protection he needs most. What do you think, Daddy? His Majesty the Emperor raised his eyebrows and did not reply immediately, but he could see that he was a little moved. The national treasury has just had a little foundation, and the palace is practicing frugality. His Majesty the Emperor really doesn't want to spend real money. The grain produced by the imperial farms in Jiangnan was transported to Beijing at a loss, so the value of the imperial farms in Jiangnan was low, so His Majesty was willing to use the imperial farms in Jiangnan as a reward. Dayang was founded less than 40 years ago. The emperor experienced poverty and war when he was a child, and he knew that life was not easy for the people. As early as Wente, Fang, Zhu of this dynasty just founded the country. Half of the education the emperor received was a summary of the reasons for the demise of the previous dynasty. Among them was why there were many wealthy families in the previous dynasty, but the treasury had no money to send troops, and the people had almost no food to fill their stomachs, so they were desperate and rose up. His Majesty was very clear that one of the reasons was that officials and businessmen colluded to bully the countryside, making it impossible for ordinary people to keep their permanent property, and even their lives were difficult to save. Even His Majesty did not know how much property Li Ju had, but now he needed to rely on the inclination of the Qingshan County magistrates to protect his property, which His Majesty could guess. Yaonan could also protect him, but Yaonan was a little far away, so he could only send his son to wait for Li Ju. Li Ju was good at fighting, which was another important reason why he could protect himself in Qingshan County. However, this skill was not enough to withstand the plunder from higher officials and dignitaries. His Majesty the Emperor said, "Let me think about it again. It's not that I don't want to, but I'm really worried." His Majesty the Emperor's concerns were actually the same as Huang Zhi's concerns at the beginning. He was afraid that Li Ju would rebel. No matter how you look at it, Li Ju valued the common people, was willing to humble himself, had such a good ability, and could gather so many people to abide by the rules of Li Yuan. They all seemed like the shadow of Wang Mang was humble before he usurped the throne, so he was worried. There was also the influence of Wu Yu and Yang Teifu, who would take every opportunity to denigrate Li Yuan. Even if the emperor understood Wu Yu and his gang's thoughts, could see their dislike for Li Ju, and could guess that they deliberately distorted Li Yuan's intentions, it would be difficult for him to completely resist their repeated persuasion. The princess did not persuade him anymore, and turned to discuss the book she had read recently with her younger sister. When it was dark, His Majesty returned to the palace with his children, and everyone had a midnight snack in the Queen's pepper room before returning to the palace. His Majesty the Emperor saw that it was getting late and wanted to stay in the pepper room, but the Empress advised him, "First, today is concubine Shen's birthday, which means she is exactly 36 years old. She has not seen the Emperor for several months. Your Majesty should just treat it as a favor to her mother, to save the third princess's face. Secondly, I want to talk to the maid about what happened today. Your Majesty is here, and we can't talk about personal matters. I have to ask your Majesty to step aside for a while. After I finish talking to the maid, I will naturally apologize to your Majesty." His Majesty thought it made sense, so he just shook the Empress's soft hands and said, "What you said makes sense. Well, I will go to see concubine Chen. It's for the sake of our third lady's face. You should think about the apology first. If you don't apologize, well, someone will suffer, right?" The Empress smiled and didn't mention it. Concubine Shen was originally selected to enter the palace because her appearance and personality were not the type that His Majesty liked. She had been selected for 20 years and had never been favored. Just because she could recognize a few words and was born in a prominent family in Jiangnan, she was familiar with the various forces and customs in Jiangnan. She was one of the sources of His Majesty's understanding of Jiangnan, so she was favored by His Majesty several times. Later, concubine Shen gave birth to the third princess, so His Majesty would occasionally reward her because of his daughter, and concubine Shen's life was still okay. After concubine Shu entered the palace, concubine Chen was completely ignored and almost never saw His Majesty enter the palace again. Because she gave birth to the third princess, and because she had been in the palace for a long time, she slowly accumulated experience and reached the position of Zhaoyi. Last year, His Majesty had ordered the treatment of palace concubines to be raised to celebrate the good food, and some of the lower level concubines who were more pleasing to him were promoted. Chen Zhaoyi thus received the treatment of a concubine, and people in the palace called her Chen concubine. Concubine Chen wanted to turn this concubine treatment into a concubine rank, but the emperor was very stingy with the harem. Unless she got his true love, or gave birth to a healthy prince, she could be officially promoted on major festivals and happy events. Otherwise, she could only endure the treatment slowly. It was very difficult for a concubine who was not favored to live in the harem, and it was even more difficult if her natal family was useless. Those concubines whose parents' natal families were in the capital, or whose brothers and sisters were promising, could live more comfortably with the help of their natal families, but it was difficult for those who had a long way to go. Not to mention that the loss on the road was 40% more. The most fatal thing was timeliness. If there was any news, by the time it was passed to the other party, it would have been cold for a month. Behind concubine Chen stood some families in Jiangnan. These families would still find ways to send some money, food, and treasures to concubine Chen every year, to make her life not too difficult. Correspondingly, concubine Chen would also play a certain protective role for the family. His Majesty the Emperor did not prohibit the concubines from visiting their natal families. This situation of concubine Chen was quite common in the palace. Even the Empress would often invite her mother, sisters, and even aunts to stay for a day or two. Other concubines did not dare to be so presumptuous. They only talked and wrote letters with their families, but it was no big deal. This month, concubine Chen celebrated her 36th birthday. The birthday gifts from Jiangnan were more generous than in previous years, and were sent to the palace. At the same time, along with the birthday gifts, there were also letters from the Jiangnan Chen family complaining and crying. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257. Embarrassing People and Stupid Things. Concubine Chen was in the Deep Palace, and the only information about the outside world she could get was from other concubines or even palace maids when they communicated with their families, or from her family members. The reliability and comprehensiveness of this information can be imagined. She probably knew that there was a man named Li who was far away in Huainan Road, who presented rare flowers and plants, which made the Empress very rewarded, and made concubine Shu treated differently by His Majesty the Emperor, because of the friendship between the two people from the same hometown. That's all. Concubine Chen didn't know the actual situation of Li Ju at all. If she had such a mind and vision, she wouldn't have waited for 20 years in the palace to get the concubine treatment. In contrast, concubine Shu was about the same age as concubine Chen. She was a widow. She was already 26 when she was selected to enter the palace, 2 years older than concubine Chen. Later, she still became concubine Shu, one of the 4 concubines. The next step was the title of imperial concubine, which His Majesty the Emperor had never canonized. In this dynasty, a concubine was already the top of the 4 concubines. His Majesty the Emperor favors concubine Shu. Could it be that she is a widow and feels different from other virgin girls? His Majesty the Emperor does not have much demand for beauty, but he pays attention to whether the concubines are comfortable. Obviously, concubine Chen unfortunately fell into the category of uncomfortable and typed a wave of GG. When concubine Chen received the complaints from the Chen and Ma families in Jiangnan, who helped each other, that they were bullied by King Shen Li Ju, she did not think much about it and directly believed their words. The letter from Jiangnan said that King Shen Li Ju was just an orphan of unknown origin, who made his fortune by plundering and turned ashore to become a local tyrant, and he was a wild man with no backing. Li Ju relied on his good relationship with the local county magistrate and the teacher. He first robbed grain from the grain merchants in Huajia County of Lingbei Road, so that the tribute they could offer to concubine Chen was collected by selling land and antiques. Then he had a dispute with Chen Zhangao, a distant nephew of concubine Chen, and assassinated him. In the meantime, he saw that the 4th daughter of Yu Yaoniang, the legitimate granddaughter of Ma Spurs's brother-in-law, was beautiful and wealthy, so he forcibly took her away despite the imperial court's order of selection, etc. In the above cases, they asked concubine Chen to help them negotiate, even if it was just to say that there would be no more disputes between the two families in the future. They would be satisfied. Concubine Chen could not see any contradiction. In her opinion, a local rich man was not worth a careful identification of the authenticity, and the tributes sent by several families in Jiangnan were really pleasing. His Majesty the Emperor was getting older, and she had to make more plans for the third prince. What could she do without money? Concubine Chen was worrying about how to get this done. It was a small matter to get paid for the work, but it was a big matter to maintain the relationship with the backers. She herself had almost no chance to meet with His Majesty the Emperor in private, and she was unwilling to let the third prince interfere in this matter. She was indeed not very smart, but even the dumbest person would be a little alert like a little animal. After being here for a long time, Concubine Chen knew that she could use the third prince to easily attract the attention of His Majesty the Emperor, but if she did so, her poor son would definitely have a bad result. At this time, the eunuch beside the emperor passed on the message that the emperor would visit her after supper and asked her to be ready. Concubine Chen was overjoyed and hurriedly asked people to dress up and replace the decorations set up for the birthday celebration during the day with a new set. She also bathed, changed clothes and made up again so that she could serve His Majesty the Emperor wholeheartedly. Because the emperor cherished his blessings and kept healthy, he had not been close to women for some years. This serving really meant chatting and playing with women in the literal sense, and she didn't even take off her clothes. Concubine Chen put on the most fashionable dress, a horse-faced skirt embroidered with hundreds of butterflies by Suzhou workers, a brocade bodice with a pattern of deer and cranes in spring, a neat palace-style bun, and a set of thumb-sized pearl jewelry. With a well-maintained face and figure, she looked to be in her early 30s. However, her outfit was obviously too extravagant. When the emperor saw the dozens of huge pearls on her head and the thousands of small beads on her head, he couldn't help but think of the queen's beautiful hair, which was loose and messy like a dark cloud, decorated only with tankeo flowers and velvet flowers, which was very clever and delicate, but much more pleasing to the eye than this. So the emperor had already developed some dislike in his heart, and even regretted listening to the empress words and visiting Concubine Chen on her birthday. Concubine Chen did not realize that the emperor was already unhappy and was still lively in arranging everything, asking the young eunuchs who were good at massage to massage the emperor's shoulders and legs, mixing soup and serving melons here, lighting lamps and candles there, and waiting for the emperor to sit on the kang to read the memorials. She washed her hands with osmanthus flour and sat aside to read a book. The emperor glanced at the book in Concubine Chen's hand in the interval between reading the memorials. Oh, Tao Te Ching, and instantly felt bored. It's not that he thought the Tao Te Ching was boring, but Concubine Chen didn't understand it at all. When the emperor was young, he might have deliberately used the content of the discussion to expose her and make fun of her. Now that he is older, he doesn't leave so much bottom line in doing things, at least he left a line. Most of the memorials that the emperor kept for a view at night were trivial matters. Unless there was a very urgent situation, they were mostly just gossip about family matters and greetings. For example, if a family has a son, they will report it to the Zhongzheng temple as usual, and the Zhongzheng temple will report it back. Or if a concubine and the first wife fight and injure someone, causing death, the male owner asks for a divorce. Such things seem to be no different from gossip tabloids. Perhaps Li Yuan's gossip tabloids are more interesting. As he was reading, His Majesty saw a post from Yang Jinglui, the Imperial College's chief academician and a third-rank university scholar, saying that his eldest son's engaged fiancé, Yu Yaoniang, would go to the capital with the selection. So he asked His Majesty to allow Yu Yaoniang to be brought to the Yang family for upbringing. The marriage between Yu Yaoniang and Yang Jiadalang was personally arranged by His Majesty, and one of them was the eldest grandson of the great scholar Yang Mingson, and the other was the second daughter of the second branch of the Yu family. They were a perfect match. At that time, His Majesty saw two little kids spinning around a Kuju, and Yang Jiadalang was at a disadvantage. He found it quite interesting and decided to tie a red string on the spur of the moment. Not many people knew about this, and even the emperor regretted it later, fearing that the two children would not get along well and become a couple of enemies. Fortunately, it worked out in the end. The two children were in love, and the Yang and Yu families were very satisfied. They just waited for the girl to turn 20 to marry. The emperor was always very proud of this matter. The fifth Miss Yu and the eldest son of the Yang family were childhood sweethearts, and their friendship was extraordinary. It was not until last year when the second Master Yu returned to his hometown and took the girl back that they separated. The emperor knew something about it. The emperor put down Yang Jingluo's invitation and asked the eunuch Fengnian in confusion. I remember that this selection was to supplement the palace ladies and grant marriages to the royal family. Women who were already engaged were not included. How come the fifth girl of the Yu family was selected? Did I remember it wrong? Fengnian smiled and said, "Your Majesty is wise. It is indeed to supplement the palace ladies and grant marriages to the royal family. As for why the fifth girl of the Yu family, who was already engaged and ready to get married, appeared in the selection," Fengnian did not answer, nor did he dare to answer. His Majesty the Emperor was even more puzzled. There is an engagement, but it is still on the list. It is obvious that Old Man Yang got the news from Old Man Yu and officially reported the request in advance, which means that the engagement is still valid. Even if it is no longer valid, they have many ways to avoid sending the girl to the palace. Then why is this fifth girl still here? I vaguely remember that she is a little beauty. If the Yang family can't make it, I still have the sons of the royal family waiting to marry her. Chapter 258, Seeing Through and Speaking Through. When concubine Chen heard that His Majesty had taken the initiative to mention the fifth girl of the Yu family in Jiangnan, she felt that the opportunity had finally come, so she pretended to be curious and asked, "The fifth girl of the Yu family? Oh, is she the daughter of the former Minister of Rights Yu Yaoniang?" His Majesty the Emperor said, "Yes, why are you asking this? I remembered that you are from Jiangnan." Concubine Chen said, "That's right, I'm a Taoist from Lingbei. It is only about 10 days away from Nanjing. If we take the sea route, it will be even faster, if the wind is favorable." His Majesty the Emperor nodded, and he instantly lost interest in the Lingbei road. He still thought that concubine Shusuanan road was better. Concubine Shin continued excitedly, "Speaking of the Yu family, I heard a new thing recently, which is also related to the selection." His Majesty the Emperor glanced at her. "Just say whatever you want to say. There's no need to hide it like this. It's a bit embarrassing." The smile on concubine Shen's face froze, and she had to bite the bullet and said, "I don't know if your Majesty wants to hear it, but I want to say it, for fear that your Majesty has been deceived. This Mr. Yu has a fourth daughter at home, who is the sister of the fifth daughter. She should also be on the selection list. I heard that the governor reported this girl, but she was snatched home by a local rich man named Li Ju." His Majesty the Emperor almost couldn't help spitting out the half-drunk tea. He put the teacup down casually, and a little eunuch hurried over to take it. He felt that the Emperor put down the teacup with a heavy hand, which made him look at the ignorant concubine Chen with sympathy. His Majesty the Emperor said, "People outside told you that it was Li Baxiu who robbed the person?" Concubine Chen smiled and said, "Yes, I still don't believe it, but if the fourth lady is really not among the candidates, it would be true." The Huajia Chen family also said that Li Ju was driving up the price of grain. Concubine Chen repeated what was in the letter with exaggeration, and then looked at His Majesty the Emperor eagerly, hoping that he would say something. The Emperor stretched out his hand, which happened to fall on Fengnian's arm. "Let's go back to the palace." This return to the palace, of course, means returning to the Emperor's own bedroom, Ganlu Palace. Concubine Chen was confused. He was fine just now. Why did he change his face so suddenly and left before he even finished reading the memorial? She hurriedly followed the team of eunuchs around the Emperor and shouted in panic, "Your Majesty, I'm wrong. I shouldn't bother your Majesty with what's happening outside. Your Majesty, your Majesty." The Emperor glanced back at her, but ordered Fengnian, "Concubine Chen is not allowed to send any more messages out of the palace, and she is not allowed to have any contact with Jiangnan." After giving this order, He looked at concubine Chen and said, "You are soft-hearted and blind. Just enjoy your life at home. Don't make random plans and ruin my big plan." These words were very harsh. Concubine Chen's legs went weak at that time, and she fell down while holding the pillar outside the door. His Majesty the Emperor angrily led his men back to Ganlu Palace, but he still remembered to allow Yang Jingli to take the fifth girl to his house for education, and then he continued to read other memorials. It's just that his mood was a little affected at this time, so the reply was naturally a little difficult within a reasonable range. For example, when a certain junior lord asked for confirmation of the successor to the title, His Majesty the Emperor directly crossed out the names of the people he had reported, but instead named another son who was still ignored by the lord as the successor to the title. His Majesty's move was almost to make it clear to the world that he knew everything and remembered everything, and whether to dig it up or not was up to him alone. He could play dumb, but that didn't mean that others could treat him like a fool. The incident in Huajia County was so serious that even the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Personnel were dispatched to interrogate Huajia County from top to bottom. The new county magistrate of Yu County, Liu Zhang, was appointed by His Majesty the Emperor. Others didn't know that a grain merchant in Yu County was killed by lightning, but how could the Emperor not know about it? At that time, some people did suspect that it was done by the vengeful Li Ju, because Li Ju's nature was there. The massacre of Zhao's Hangshu village was also directly related to Li Ju's suppression of grain prices and the organization of a grain store alliance. It would be strange if Li Ju didn't take action. However, the time when Li Ju appeared in Qingshan County did not match, and the death of the grain merchant was too damning, so everyone had to dispel this suspicion. In other words, His Majesty the Emperor would rather Li Ju did it. God's will is too illusory, and he cannot grasp it in his hands, which makes the Emperor feel uncomfortable. He is confident that he is the Son of Heaven and represents the will of Heaven. He will definitely be there for 100 years, and there will be a new Son of Heaven in the future. Who knows when God is going to change people? But if it was Li Ju who did it, everything would be much simpler. Li Ju acted cautiously, and the main culprit only killed the three most heinous crimes. It is obvious that he is a very restrained person, and he is also a mortal body. Being a mortal body, there are limits, and can be controlled. He can only use such people with confidence. His Majesty the Emperor calmed down for a moment, retrieved Yunan's letter and the case files at that time, and checked them again. The confessions of the parties involved, the results of the investigation by the coroner, the confession of the county magistrate of Yu County, the confessions of other grain merchants and bullies, the confession of the prefect of Huajia County, the confession of the villagers of Beishu Village, the confession of the grain merchants of Qingshan County, the official warehouse records and other evidences are all available. The Emperor is convinced that the judgment at that time was correct. It was indeed the officials and merchants of Yu County at that time who colluded to harm the people. The integrity and fairness of Qingshan Li Ju disrupted the alliance and exposed the flaws. Li Ju was not only not wrong in the whole thing, but also made contributions. The Emperor felt relieved. As for the fourth girl, mentioned by concubine Chen, she should have been in the selection, but was snatched away by Li Ju. His Majesty did not believe it at the beginning. The fourth girl should indeed be on the list of selection, but the possibility that the old man Yunan tied the men to his home to get married is greater than the possibility that Li Ju snatched the girl from the Yu family. Do you really think that the Yu Yaoniang is a vegetarian and a local rich man can snatch his girl? The real prominent families were unwilling to participate in this selection, so the truth was that the fourth sister of the Yu family took the opportunity to ask for demotion under the pretext of engagement. After all, this selection was mainly to supplement the inner women, that is, palace maids and nannies, and secondly to arrange marriages for the royal family. Among the children of the emperor, only the eldest son has reached the age of marriage, but the eldest prince's wife has been engaged to Zhengshu, the granddaughter of Zheng Shidao, and the prince's concubines have also been engaged to 4 young ladies. Those well-informed wealthy families are not fools. Are they willing to rush to give their sisters and daughters who can marry other princes in the future to the eldest prince's concubines? However, His Majesty the Emperor is very interested in the gossip about Li Ju and the fourth girl Yu. Li Ju has almost no bad reviews, so this only stain is very eye-catching, which makes people curious. In addition, He likes Li Ju at this time and decides to give him a little reminder. So the emperor immediately called the Bachelor of Reading to record a letter and send it to Jiangnan. After writing the letter, His Majesty the Emperor thought of the matter of Li Ju mentioned to his eldest daughter today, and he couldn't help but be a little moved. Li Ju only helped to stabilize the local grain prices and did not even affect the interests of neighboring counties. He also made contributions to raising grain for disaster relief and stabilizing the people's hearts last year. He did nothing wrong from beginning to end, but his caution and integrity were still seen as wrong by others, and the frame-up was even sent to the desks of concubines. It can be seen that Le Kang was right. Li Ju had no shortage of flowers, beauties, and treasures, but only lacked an honor that could protect him and prevent him from being harmed by those shameful calculations. Chapter 259 Thunder 1. His Majesty the Emperor had basically decided what reward to give to Li Ju, which was a relief. In the pepper room, the debate between the Empress and her beloved daughter about the Prince Consort and the good lady finally came to an end. The Empress was defeated and admitted that the Prince Consort and the Princess did not like each other, so the good lady could not be blamed alone. In a relationship between the two, the one who loves more deeply and unconditionally always gives in first. The Empress is a boss among women, but in front of her beloved daughter, she has to take a step back. So, are you just going to let it go? You should at least reprimand his family, otherwise I don't know how they will treat you in the future. Chen Guiyang had already changed into Yan Ju's dress, a plain sky blue Kayantang silk with a dark pattern of ginkgo flowers. Her beautiful hair was also let down and was being carefully cared for by the palace maids. The flour dew tributed by foreign countries, the extremely finely ground pearl powder, the oil boiled with fresh flowers, moisturized every inch of Chen Guiyang's skin and every strand of hair. Chen Guiyang was clean of all her makeup. Her face was still beautiful and charming. Between a girl and a woman, she looked charming but innocent. The queen looked at such a beautiful daughter, and she regretted choosing such a son-in-law for her. Chen Guiyang smiled softly and said, I have lived in the palace for a month, and there is no reward from the palace for the birth of Marquis Daying. Anyone with a bit of dignity should understand what my father and mother mean. Doing anything else always feels like too much, unless Chen Guiyang stopped the last few words, and her lacquered pupils were absent-minded for a moment. The queen who knew her best understood her unspoken meaning very accurately. Unless Chen Guiyang never had to return to Marquis Daying's mansion, and was no longer the wife of a son-in-law, the emperor and the queen would be cautious about what they wanted to do, and they had to keep some dignity for their daughter. This is also the root of the conflict between the mother and daughter today. The queen does not want to let the prince consort's family go, and Chen Guiyang has figured out that this matter cannot be entirely blamed on the prince consort, and above the prince consort is Yang Teifu. In any case, Yang Teifu is related to the previous dynasty. Chen Guiyang is worried that her mother will be involved in the disputes of the previous dynasty because of her and the prince consort's problems. However, Chen Guiyang is not without resentment towards the prince consort's family, so she actually does not want to easily expose it in her heart. This contradiction has aggravated the queen's dilemma. The queen was upset and urged her daughter to go back to the bedroom where she occasionally lived before she got married. The next day was another peaceful day. The princess entered the palace and sent a message that she would stay for a while and not return to the mansion. The guilty prince consort's family did not dare to have any thoughts. The news that the princess was pregnant had spread quickly among the close nobles, and many people sent gifts. Madame Yang thought that everything was settled, and she accepted the gift generously. She was also complacent, thinking that she had made the right move by arranging a nanny to publicize the good news. Even if a princess is as proud as she is, if she can't give birth to a son, she is just a hen that doesn't lay eggs. Why is she so arrogant every day? She has many ways to deal with such a pretentious daughter-in-law. However, in the afternoon, things took a turn for the worse. The nanny who followed the princess into the palace was beaten half to death and dragged to the mansion of Marquis Daying to be dealt with in public. In front of everyone in the mansion, the female officials, eunuchs, and ladies sent by the palace watched closely and dealt with the nanny's entire family. Her husband, who was the head of Madame Yang's farm, her son and daughter-in-law, who worked in the Teifu mansion, her daughter who had been redeemed and married, her son-in-law who was a merchant, her 3-year-old granddaughter and her infant grandson, and even her and her husband's relatives and in-laws. It involved more than the confiscation of property and extermination of the clan. More than 30 people were imprisoned and questioned for angering the princess and causing her miscarriage. The serious ones were exiled, and the minor ones were shackled. Most of the people who were called out were innocent. They didn't know what the plan between Madame and Madame Yang was. The sudden questioning was like a bolt from the blue, which made them dizzy. The mother-in-law, who was not in good health, fell on the spot. The eunuchs and maids who were as fierce as wolves and tigers didn't care so much. They immediately took the guards to torture all the people away. There was only the sound of crying for mercy and confessing the crime, and even the onlookers couldn't bear to watch. This happened in the mansion of Marquis Daying instead of the Yang mansion of the Grand Tutor, which was separated by a wall. The charge was the princess had a miscarriage, which had a source and destination, and no one thought there was anything wrong with it. Madame Yang and the prince consort knew that the princess was not pregnant, but how could they dare to say it at this time? They finally understood the deterrence represented by the word emperor. Usually, the princess did not care about them because she was really kind and merciful, but it did not mean that she had no way. The royal family would not reason with them, and they did not need any excuses to punish them. They would act with thunder and lightning. And this was just a warning. After dragging away the Nana's family, the female official Yu Yaoniang sent by the palace continued to read the queen's decree. This time, the decree was to take away a girl named Yu Yaoniang. Just now, the nanny was dealt with and the princess had a miscarriage, which only made Madame Yang a little indignant. Now the queen directly asked for Yu Yaoniang, which made Madame Yang tremble with fear. The Shan girl was pregnant with the prince consort's first child, her first grandson. Actually, if she had known that the queen and her daughter were so jealous, how could she dare to bring such a thing to the table? Wouldn't it be enough to send the girl to the countryside to give birth and keep the child? How dare she come up with such a bad idea after listening to her son's pleas? Madame Yang begged hurriedly, I think the queen has misunderstood us. We do have a girl named Shana in our family, but my family has long returned to her parents' home. It will take me a month to chase her back now. Really? Yu Yaoniang sneered and ordered. An important imperial gift of the princess was stolen by this Shana. You must turn the Marquistein's mansion upside down and dig up every piece of land to find this person. When we find her, we will leave. We naturally don't know what this person looks like, and the people in the Marquis mansion will probably make excuses to conceal it. So the queen wants the doctor to check the pulse of all the female relatives found and take away all the pregnant ones. As soon as the voice fell, the servants of the Marquistein's mansion were in an uproar again. Even if they were stupid, they knew what was going on. Shanjie was the cousin of the prince consort and had not yet married. Shanjie was pregnant and the princess had a miscarriage. There were so many things going on. No wonder the queen was so angry that she sent so many people to the door to slap her in the face. Half of the servants in the Daying Marquis's mansion were the princess's dowry, and the other half were the family children sent by Madame Yang to her son. Most of the half sent by Madame Yang were Madame Yang's own companions. They were all old, some were married, and there were 2 or 3 servants who were pregnant. They all lived outside the second gate waiting to give birth. Madame Yang also promised them to be wet nurses for the prince consort's children after they gave birth. Hearing that the queen was going to take away all the pregnant people, everyone was even more panicked. They all thought that the queen must think that Shanjie climbed into the bed and hurt the princess's face, and she would definitely not end up well. If they were mistakenly taken away as Shanjie, they would be in danger of life or death. Even if they were found to be not Shanjie, the queen and the princess would definitely take it out on them in their age. Everyone started to blame each other, and one of the servants who came with the princess pushed out a pretty girl and said, her name is Shana, and her surname is Yu. She should be the one you are looking for. Chapter 260 Thunder 2. The noise in the Marquistein's mansion attracted the attention of the Grand Tutor Yang's mansion. The Grand Tutor sent people to inquire about the situation. Yaoniang, who had a good relationship with the princess, was worried that the princess would suffer, so she volunteered to bring people. When Yaoniang saw the situation in the mansion, Her heart immediately turned to the horizon. In front of the people, sent by her father, Yaoniang asked reluctantly, "My dear sister, what happened? The Grand Tutor sent me to ask, but our Marquis is ignorant and has angered the Queen." Yaoniang was in the palace and didn't know that Yaoniang and the princess had a good relationship. He just said with a straight face, "It has nothing to do with the prince consort, and I dare not alarm the Grand Tutor. It's just because a maid stole the princess's things. The princess wanted to conceal it, but what was lost was the treasure given by Her Royal Highness the Queen. Even if the princess wanted to cover it up, it was useless." Yaoniang didn't think of stopping it. After hearing this, she simply let it go. "In this case, please do as you please, sister." Not only did she let go, she also stopped the other people sent by her father, and by the way, she sarcastically stabbed her stepmother. "Your Highness is kind, and will naturally not wrongly accuse a good person. Everyone, please be patient. If the madam feels wronged, at most you can go and beg the master to go to Ganlu Palace to plead for the return of the madam's good niece." Madam Yaoniang was so angry that her face turned blue, but when she met the fierce eyes of Yaoniang and others, her anger turned into pity. She watched Yaoniang raise his chin, without even looking at her, and ordered people to tie up Yu Yaoniang and take him away. After Yaoniang and others left, Madam Yaoniang dared to complain angrily, "What do you mean by stealing or not? It's really a false accusation. What daughter-in-law in the world treats her mother-in-law like this, and is so domineering?" Yaoniang sneered, looked at the stupid brother, walked over with her hands folded and said, "It's true that you are the mother-in-law, but it also depends on whether Her Royal Highness the Queen recognizes you as a relative. Madam, just tell Her Royal Highness the Queen whether it is stealing or not, and see if Her Royal Highness believes it. It's all false accusations, so there is no shortage of excuses. The royal family is willing to reason, that is the royal kindness, and being unreasonable is their duty. The girl is innocent, but she was delayed by madam. A good girl, but she has a child before she even gets married. Even if the master comes to ask, it's too shameful. Do you still want to break into the palace and ask the queen why she is picking on a little girl? Save the face of you and our Teifu mansion." The son-in-law supported his mother, his face full of anger, but unable to speak. The queen did all this without informing the princess, but only mentioned it to His Majesty the Emperor, and got His Majesty's permission. When Yu Yaoniang was brought into the palace, the queen deliberately sent her daughter away, and sent her to accompany the Shuhua Palace, where the princesses were raised to read books with her sisters, and she freed up her hands to deal with this little girl personally. Yu Yaoniang was just as Chen Guiyang said, just an ordinary little girl, gentle and pitiful, beautiful, and even a little cowardly. Miss Shan just turned 16 this year, and she was not the apple of her parents' eyes in her early years. After her parents passed away, her family property was occupied by her clansmen, and she was stranded outside, and had to seek refuge with Madam Yaoniang to survive. When she was living under the roof of the Teifu mansion, Sister Shan was extremely cautious, but Madam Yaoniang deliberately arranged for her to encounter her and her husband many times, and she had no choice. She was also a well-educated girl from a small family, and naturally knew that this practice violated etiquette, but she could do nothing about it. Madam Yaoniang held her career, her future, and even her life and death in her hands. If she didn't obey, Madam Yaoniang would just withdraw her protection, and she would die in vain. Therefore, when Madam Yaoniang and her husband proposed to take her in, Miss Shan used the princess doesn't know about this, and it's disrespectful to take her in without telling her as a reason to refuse for a while, but it was only for a while. When Madam Yaoniang and her husband ran out of patience, she had no other choice. The queen could understand why Chen Guiyang felt that Yu Yaoniang was not at fault. Yu Yaoniang had been helpless every step of the way to where she was today. Even in Yu Yaoniang's own words, the person she least wanted to hurt was the princess. Only with the princess did she get the dignity of being a person. Since her parents passed away, only the princess treated her as a person. In the end, Yu Yaoniang cried, "If I can make the princess happy, I'm willing to die. But I don't want to die, I also want to live." To be honest, the queen didn't know how to deal with such a situation. If Yu Yaoniang was really a vixen, things would be much simpler. But this was just a poor little girl, crying so hard that the queen was kind and could not help but feel sympathy for her. She asked the palace servants to take her to a side hall and put her under house arrest to deal with her later. The queen wanted to hide it from Yu Yaoniang, but Yu Yaoniang knew it that night. However, she did not quarrel with the queen, but took Shanjie to her room and did not let her go out, but also did not let anyone treat her harshly. Princess Yu Yaoniang did not blame her, but she did not like her either. So how to deal with this little girl became the final problem. On this day, His Majesty the Emperor prepared a reward for Li Ju. He gave Li Ju an additional title, about the same as the third rank, and the title was Feng. He gave him a subordinate official, who was the 7th rank, to take care of Li Ju's daily affairs. The candidate was selected by Li Ju himself, and reported to the Ministry of Rights for approval. He was also given the honor of not taking off his sword, and not kneeling when meeting the prince and the ministers below the 1st rank. He was also given to guards, who were not in the mainstream, and were recruited by Li Ju himself. He was also given a palace maid as a concubine to manage the food. As for other money and other things, they were prepared according to the usual practice, and there was no need to elaborate. Each reward was clearly announcing to the world that he was very optimistic about Li Ju. Please be a little discerning, and don't put your hands on Li Ju, otherwise Li Ju would chop you off. Not only will I not pursue Li Ju, but I will also count you as a crime of disobeying the emperor's order. The matter of giving a beauty was not only because Li Ju had no family and no one to take care of the backyard, but also to soften his mind and monitor him. Of course, the palace maid to be bestowed had to be selected by the empress. His Majesty the Emperor drafted the decree of award and showed it to the Empress, instructing her to find an honest, reliable, and extraordinary beauty to send to Yu Yaoniang. The Empress pondered over it carefully, and suddenly something came to her mind. She said, "Your Majesty really likes Li Baxiu. I think it's too much. Otherwise, Your Majesty can ask him to do something. If he succeeds, Your Majesty will give him a beauty, and I will also give him a beauty. If he fails, it means that he is an honest farmer who can do things, but not so smoothly. He is a talent of the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Revenue. This reward will be reduced by 1 level, and it will be enough to just order the governor or some prince to take care of him." It didn't seem to go against her original intention to reduce the level and then order someone to take care of Li Ju, so His Majesty could accept it, but he was very surprised. "My dear, what else can you do to embarrass him?" The Empress gently tilted her face towards the direction of Princess Yu Yaoniang's bedroom and said, "Who else can it be? Of course it's your precious daughter Akan. Children are debts, and this debt is especially heavy. If I can't think of a way to deal with the affairs of Marquis Dang's mansion, I'm going to worry about my hair falling out." Chapter 261 Thunder 3. His Majesty listened to the story of the Marquis Dang's mansion, as if he were listening to a variety show. He was especially amused when he heard the queen complain about the princess's heresy. The queen complained to her daughter and turned around to see His Majesty the Emperor eating a melon beside her and urging her to continue. She was furious at the time, but fortunately she remembered that this was His Majesty the Emperor, so she did not hit him directly, but asked quietly, "Does Your Majesty think it's funny?" The Emperor quickly put down the melon in his hand, and the palace maids came in line to bring towels, scented beans, hot water, mouthwash, etc., to help His Majesty the Emperor clean his hands and face. His Majesty the Emperor said, "How dare I laugh? I think that Zitong is right. We should try to see if Li Baxiu can clean up this mess." The queen's expression eased a little. "Well, it's settled then. After Mr. Li has resolved this mess, I will talk to the girl carefully and make sure to find out who taught her the wrong thing. Who taught her to forget about hierarchy and keep defending the little girl. The little girl is pitiful, but does being pitiful give her a reason to be so arrogant?" And she said that the prince consort was wronged. What did the prince consort feel wronged about? Did he refuse the treatment that the prince consort should have? He is the Marquis of Dang and lives in the Marquis's mansion. What is missing from the salary and rewards of the prince consort? If he didn't like our girl, he should have refused before the marriage was granted. If he hadn't nodded at the beginning, how could our girl be married to him? Now, he is eating our girl's food and still despises our girl. Where does he get the courage from? Why doesn't he go to heaven? His Majesty the Emperor echoed again and again, and together they criticized the prince consort and Yu Yaoniang. The Empress finally calmed down a little, and the matter of giving Li Ju an extra competition question was settled. Under normal circumstances, His Majesty the Emperor rarely made such willful requests or tasks to his subjects. Even if he had to make a task, it would be issued through the official system. If it was a private request, it would be handed over to someone with a closer relationship to execute. The Emperor's request to Li Ju was the latter, but the relationship between Li Ju and the Emperor was far from close. But for some reason, the Emperor looked at Li Ju as if he were a junior and unconsciously used this more private way. The Emperor was very patient with the juniors he liked. For example, he was especially like an old father to his eldest daughter, awakens. The princess was joking with her sisters in Shuhe Hall, and His Majesty the Emperor was willing to wait for her to come back from the Empress. After the princess came back from Shuhe Hall, the Emperor chatted with the princess about recent gossip, and did not mention Yu Yaoniang and the prince consort at all. At night, the family of three had supper together, joking happily until the time came. Before leaving, the Emperor also told his daughter, "You are not allowed to go back before your mother's birthday. I feel a little lonely when you are not in the palace. On weekdays, you only stay for 2 or 3 days. Your mother is worried that you will be talked about, so she is embarrassed to keep you for a long time. After sending you away, she will cry all night. This time you can stay for a while. Although your mother quarreled with you in the past 2 days, she will cry again if you are really sent away." Chen Guiyang's nose was sore by her father's words, and she agreed reluctantly. That night, His Majesty the Emperor asked the Imperial Academy to draft a letter, and the letter was delivered to Yaoniang's mansion in Jinling, Jiangnan, in less than half a month. Taking advantage of the northwest wind blowing all the way, Yaoniang wanted to curse his mother when he received the letter. If he had read the poems of the earth, he would probably say it's a pity that the table in front of me is empty in the middle of the night, and I don't ask about the people, but ghosts and gods. Li Ju took a pragmatic approach, and all his thoughts, ideas, and actions were aimed at people's livelihood. What is the problem that His Majesty the Emperor has put forward now? It's his private matter. It's fine if it's the Emperor's own private matter, but in fact it's the private matter of his children, a quarrel between a young couple in bed. How can this be used to delay the time of a talent like Li Ju? Although he wanted to scold him, seeing that the conditions offered by His Majesty the Emperor were obviously higher than what Li Ju deserved now, Yaoniang still followed His Majesty the Emperor's wishes and rewrote a letter to ask Li Ju for help. He erased the information of the real people mentioned in the incident, replaced it with the identity of his good friend's daughter, and sent it to ask Li Ju, who was resourceful and could understand the feelings of girls, if there was any way to solve this matter. Fearing that Li Ju's idea was too rude, Yaoniang emphasized that the status of the client in the literati was very delicate, and his daughter's every move might lead to countless attacks. The client himself didn't care, but his daughter might die in society. Yaoniang did not directly mention the word social death, but the description he used accurately positioned it here. When Li Ju received Yaoniang's letter, he happened to be chatting about the same topic with his pen pal Chung Zisheng. Li Ju knew that Chung Zisheng was the eldest princess, but the eldest princess did not know that she had been exposed. In the past year of correspondence, Princess Chen Guiyang was unilaterally washed over and over again by Li Ju's social sciences and physics, and it can almost be said that she had formed a certain mental dependence. It was difficult for her not to mention Li Ju that the Tangfang maid was pregnant in her life. She concealed some information and tried to complain about this matter with Li Ju from the perspective of an observer. Li Ju happened to be relatively leisurely during this period, so he just took a look. He and Chen Guiyang had a similar view. Was the son-in-law wrong? No. There was no need to blame him for being greedy for wealth and unwilling to treat the princess well. How could an ordinary official's son refuse the emperor's request? The princess was indeed not the woman he loved. It was enough for ordinary people to treat people they did not love with courtesy. Besides, this is ancient times, when the husband is the heaven and men are superior to women. It is difficult to ask a man to consider too much for a woman he doesn't like. So is the princess wrong? The princess is even more wrong. The princess is the most innocent in the whole incident. Marrying someone you don't like and enduring the other party's cold violence and being able to hold back and not fight back is simply a perfect victim. Yu Yaoniang went with the flow. What did she do wrong? She and the prince consort are both poor people who have no control over their fate. Even if her affair succeeds, her best ending is just a maid, and the worst ending is death. However, this is a private matter between the young couple, and Li Ju has no right to say more. Just when Li Ju was about to write back to the princess and comfort her as a friend, he received a letter from Yunnan. Although Yunnan repeatedly emphasized that this was a problem encountered by an old friend of his, Li Ju could see at a glance that this matter and the princess's matter were actually the same. This is difficult. If it were just an ordinary family, Li Ju would definitely persuade them to break up and write 10,000 reasons. In this world, divorce is really not a big deal. The Tang dynasties part ways and live happily together is the same here. The chaotic times 30 or 40 years ago almost ruined the scholars. There are not enough scholars now to find faults in groups of 3 or 5, and the people's livelihood and economy are not good enough to tolerate more moral shackles. People are still seeking survival, food and clothing, marriage and having children. The society is still in the stage of seeking full granaries and has not yet entered the stage of knowing etiquette. For ordinary people, even ordinary officials and wealthy people, if the couple wants to divorce, it is not a big problem, as long as they can settle the families of both sides. But this is the marriage of the princess of the royal family. It cannot ruin the princess's reputation, cannot cause dissatisfaction with the royal family among the scholars, cannot let the princess be wronged, and must help the old father who loves his daughter to vent his anger. It is already difficult to have the best of both worlds. This is to make the 4 major joys, which is not an ordinary tricky thing. Chapter 262. Bad idea, but useful. Li Ju could have made his decision according to the logic of the ancients. Under the classical ancient logic, excluding the possibility of divorce and marriage, the solution to such marital conflicts is nothing more than the standard paradigm. Sell the concubine, let the woman choose a concubine to give birth to children, or simply accept the concubine, but clarify the property inheritance rights of the woman's future children in various ways, sacrificing 1 or 2 girls to ensure the normal continuation of the marriage and the man's incense is closer to the convention. Only women like the princess who obviously have more say can ask for adoption or adoption of heirs, clarify the division of property, etc. The final result is mostly decent on the outside, but make do on the inside. But Li Ju was unwilling to submit such an answer. Obviously this was not the answer Yanan wanted to see. Couldn't the princess think of this simple idea herself, and had to write a letter to Yanan to ask him to think about it? The words in the letter, sent by Yanan, showed that the old father actually wanted a way to vent his anger, retain his dignity, and not affect the princess's future life. It's a bit difficult, but not impossible. Further cutting off the treatment of the prince consort, implicating his family and friends, and separating the two to solve the future troubles, are all simple ideas that can be thought of. Who doesn't want to make things difficult for the princess? However, is this way of venting anger and continuing to make do with life the answer the princess wants? From the princess's own letter, it can be clearly seen that she has thought it through very thoroughly. In the final analysis, this matter can only be blamed on the feudal system. Whether it is that the prince consort dare not refuse the marriage under the suppression of imperial power, or the princess cannot marry freely under the feudal system, or the prince consort and mother-in-law can disgust the princess in the system of respect and inferiority, or Yu Yaoniang has no chance to resist in the class system. In the final analysis, it is this system that is doing evil. It does not treat people as human beings. So once someone wakes up and realizes that he is a human being, it will be like the princess. No one is wrong, but she is very sad. She is so sad, but she can't get rid of her fate. Li Ju hesitated for a second and still chose to help the princess. If she wants the princess to be happy in the future, she must get rid of this marriage. As long as this idea comes up, there will be criticism, so this idea cannot be proposed by the princess. It must be the reason of the prince consort's family. Li Ju's suggestion is to imitate the Tang dynasty on Earth. What if there is a problem with the marriage? Just get married. What if this dynasty does not believe in Buddhism? then change the idea. Wu Zetian and Yang Yuhuan worship Buddha and Taoism respectively, so our princess can worship the ancestors. Your ancestral temple and the old grave are still in Jinling. Is there any problem in letting the princess take orders to sweep the ancestral temple? Jinling is so far away, and the princess is so delicate. It will take 2 years to go back and forth. Adding the time to serve the ancestors, it is possible to be away for 3 to 5 years. 2 years plus 3 to 5 years is 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. After such a long time, I don't know what has happened to human affairs. It is not so difficult to think of the reason for letting the princess return to the ancestral tomb and ancestral temple to preside over the sweeping. The princess just had a miscarriage, and the wife of the imperial tutor was seriously ill again. The hexagram showed that there was something wrong with the old ancestor's lucky house, that is the ancestral tomb coffin. Wouldn't it be natural to ask the princess to go and have a look? As for Madame Yang's illness, the emperor made her sick. How could she not be sick? That little Liu girl was still living in the palace. They could only endure it for the hard-earned grandson. The princess went to Jinling, and the prince consort naturally had to go. The two were in a foreign land, and nothing would happen unexpectedly. At that time, His Majesty the Emperor would take the princess back privately on the grounds that the princess was weak. How many years could the imperial tutor and his wife endure the prince consort hanging alone in Jinling? When would the imperial tutor and his wife be willing to find a way to end this marriage relationship? And when would they let the prince consort come back? According to Li Ju's calculations, it would take at most 3 to 5 years. By then, His Majesty the Emperor only needed to privately show sympathy for the prince consort who was alone outside without any human relations and affection, and decide to let him dissolve his relationship with the royal family, and he could come back. After the princess had a miscarriage, she still went to the ancestral tomb in Jinling to pay homage to her father devoutly on behalf of her father. Even if people outside have objections to the princess's divorce, can they still say that she was wrong in respecting her ancestors? The princess was in poor health and returned to Beijing for recuperation. The prince consort and the princess lived in 2 places for a long time. After all, it was not the way for husband and wife, let alone the way to fulfill filial piety. However, in order to let the prince consort come back, his status as a prince consort must be revoked first. There is nothing wrong with this logic. Li Ju's method has the meaning of punishment for the prince consort, Madame Yang, and even the imperial tutor, because in Li Ju's cognition, these 3 made more mistakes. This mistake is not to say that they disrespected the princess or married the princess, but were not willing to live with her. It was mainly about Miss Liu Shana. The girl didn't want to be a concubine, so he forced her to take a concubine. Let's not talk about modern cognition, just talk about ancient times. If it were a powerless family, the girl would have sued him for raping. It is nonsense to say that the girl did not refuse. The girl did not refuse, but chose to stay as a maid. But was she really a choice when she had no other choice, when she was desperate? The prince consort himself did not like the princess, but was forced by the imperial power to marry the princess, which led to the subsequent discord. But when he was in a dominant position, he did something more excessive than the imperial power, completely forgetting not to do to others what you do not want others to do to you. Li Ju was a saint, but his saint was conditional. Obviously, the prince consort's family was not in his saint range. Li Ju sorted out his thoughts and wrote it down straightforwardly. In this historical line, Wu Zetian and Yang Yuhuan did not serve the father and son successively. These 2 celebrities appeared. Wu Zetian still became the empress, and Yang Yuhuan was indeed favored by the 6 palaces, but there was a slight shift in the upgrade process of the 2. It is a good thing. If the 2 of them happened once again, Li Ju would not dare to use this method of changing identities. Comparing the princess to Wu Zetian or Yang Yuhuan, it is easy for people to nitpick and make innuendos. He is not looking for death. If this plan succeeds, the princess may have to restrain her movements outside and sacrifice some reputation in the future, but she can gain spiritual freedom. In the future, she may even have the opportunity to choose her favorite husband and live a happy and comfortable life for decades. Li Ju himself could not think of a better way, or there were ways to fake death or grant death. Li Ju intuitively felt that this was not what the princess wanted. After sending the letter away, Li Ju wrote another letter to transition separately, talking to him about the family affairs of his friend from a friend's perspective. Li Ju avoided the differences between himself and the princess, and only praised the consensus. Li Ju was quite surprised that a princess who was high above could think of Liu Shane's helplessness. This princess should have a very strong ability to empathize. No wonder she was a princess, but failed to get the family marriage she wanted. I hope the princess's parents really love her as much as they show, and not just pretending. The 2 letters were delivered on the same day, and it was already the end of the year. Li Ju's recent leisure time was entirely based on the busyness of other people in Lee Garden, checking accounts, inventory, sending brides, and settling accounts. There were all kinds of things going on in the garden, among merchants, on the barren hills, and at the imperial farm. It was all because of Wang Dechen and others gritting their teeth to work, which made Li Ju himself lazy. Finally, everyone else finished their work and compiled a thick general account book and list for Li Ju to confirm himself. This was the last thing before the new year. Chapter 263. A single flower does not make spring. During the 3rd spring festival in Liyuan, everything was set. Even the spring festival gala had a set of procedures. The Pillars of Dayan Club were all here, and wandering artists from outside also signed up to join in. The newly married couple of County Magistrate Wu, Fugai and his wife, Huang Zhi and his wife, Yu Fu and his wife, Director Wang and others came early to reserve the front row to watch the Spring Festival Gala. Wang Bangtao had seen many wealthy and powerful people, and looking at this list, he felt that it was a heavy weight. On the day of the Little New Year, Li Ju distributed festival gifts to everyone in Liyuan as usual. As in previous years, Li Ju personally distributed them one by one. Families with children and the elderly were given priority, followed by unmarried girls, then unmarried boys, and finally newly married families without elderly people and children. Liyuan people were given a full portion, with slight adjustments, based on gender and age. People from outside who married Liyuan people were given half a portion. Li Ju said that the New Year gifts would be sent to the small building as usual. When he distributed them one by one, Sanjiu and others who were responsible for preparing the New Year gifts changed their faces. Li Ju still felt a little strange until he got the list and saw the New Year's goods piled up like a mountain and almost overflowing from the small building. Sanjiu read his surprise from his expression and said with a smile, "When we reported to the master the other day, the master must not have taken it seriously. In our family, including the people in the imperial farm and the factory, there are more than 200 long-term workers who have signed full contracts, more than 200 half contracts, and there are also 100 temporary workers at the moment. If we go back to the busiest time before the new year, including the poor relief department, there are nearly 300 people. I, as the master, know all this. If you still give out New Year's gifts one by one, you have to wait until the first day of the new year to give them out." Li Ju quickly gave up the responsibility and asked Sanjiu to give out the single girls, the couple of housekeeper Wu and his wife, and the elderly to Wu's mother. Li Ju only took care of the core figures, plus the couples and single boys, and took care of everyone's needs. The old workers, Li Ju prefers to call them workers, who have worked in Lee Garden for 3 years have already been fundamentally different from the new generation of long-term workers in terms of spirit and energy. For example, Yu Yaoniang, Jeteng and others are just like workers in the modern dimension, generous and confident, with sunshine and tenacity like wild grass. Yu Yaoniang will be a 17-year-old girl after the Chinese New Year, and a good nutritional combination has given Yu Yaoniang a healthy body. Yu Yaoniang, Gizzy and others are all very well proportioned and beautiful, which is why Li Ju has been avoiding them for nearly a year. Yu Yaoniang's height is close to 1.6 meters, and she looks tall in the Holy Garden. She is one of the few female workers who can do some hard work. If she is not yet an adult, some jobs that require strength will recruit women like her. The old employees are also more willing to put forward more demands, such as Yu Yaoniang, who wants to learn carpentry systematically. She has worked in the textile factory and music clothing store, and also studied seed classification and cross-cultivation with Yu Fu for a period of time, but in the end she became interested in Yu Yaoniang's carpentry. 1 year ago, because of Yu Yaoniang was very averse to carpenters and woodworkers. However, this year, Li Ju arranged all teenagers aged 14 and above to take turns everywhere. In the end, Yu Yaoniang was won over by Yu Yaoniang's disassembly method and decided to go in the direction of carpentry for the time being. Yu Yaoniang's talent is not to be mentioned. 90% of people in the world do not have talent. She can endure hardships and persist, so this thing can be done. Even Yu Yaoniang may not be born good at this, but she is easy to get the hang of when disassembling drawings, and she has put in a lot of effort, which is why she is what she is today. Yu Yaoniang's New Year's wish is that Li Ju School can open a carpentry class. Later, Jeteng wants to learn accounting, Xiaolian wants to learn business management, and so on. All walks of life have more or less occupied. Li Ju thought that the main part of the school has been almost completed, and only some supporting small houses, greening, and laboratories have not been completed in the later stage. It is possible to consider recruiting a group of craftsmen to train talents in different categories. Everyone wants to take the imperial examination and eat the emperor's food, but there are only a few fixed places for scholars and jinshi every year. The more scholars there are, the more intense the competition is. For one person who passes, there are 10 who can't, and 100 who have to find ways to make a living. The goal that Li Ju wants to achieve through the private school is to find a way out for the 10 who can't pass, and to fill the stomachs of the 100 who have to make a living. This plan came about a long time ago, as early as when Li Ju taught Pinyin to the people of Qingshan, as early as when he planned the private school and summoned craftsmen. He had made such a plan. Yu Yaoniang is a representative of those who hope to continue to improve themselves. Some people also hope that their family members can also become employees of Li Garden. Singles want to marry, married people want to have children, those with children want to send their children to schools outside to pursue their dreams of imperial examinations, and those who have hometowns in other places want to ask Li Ju how to make their hometown people live a good life. Some people simply said that they were actually subordinates of someone in a certain place and specially invited Li Ju to run Li Garden in that place, and the conditions were arbitrary. Li Ju was both amused and confused. Poaching and attracting investment are really the same in ancient and modern times. However, Li Ju still wrote down the place name and official name for future use when transferring productivity. Ancient times are not modern times. Bureaucrats do not bear the responsibility of revitalizing the economy and dredging business. Their assessment indicators are taxation, population and public security. It is rare that bureaucrats say the 4 words conditions are arbitrary to an ordinary landlord for matters that are not in their own assessment standards. Li Ju forgot that he has a virtual title and is not an ordinary landlord. With the help of Wu Guanjia and others, and Wang Dechen and Fu Xiaogui helping to record everyone's demands, all the New Year's goods were distributed within 3 days, and everyone's needs were sorted out and put on a large whiteboard. After the 15th day of the new year, let's get together to discuss these things. Some are unreasonable. Li Ju crossed out distributed daughter-in-law, collect wages on behalf of my daughter, sister/wife, master, matchmaker for me to marry someone. I hope my children can take over my job after I retire, and other requests from various demands, and marked the needs of studying with different colored pens. Some really need to be taken seriously, especially the clarification of house deeds, pensions, and vocational skills training, which are related to everyone's development. After solving the problem of survival, people will definitely want to solve the problem of development. The first and second batches of people recruited by Li Yuan are now facing a development dilemma. Most of them are currently doing basic physical work and rely heavily on a healthy and young body, so they have to think more about their future and their children. Next year, in addition to accepting my tasks and continuing to study their own skills, I will give extra money to craftsmen who are willing to open classes and accept apprentices. If there is anyone who is willing to teach for life, like Wu Guanjia and Dechen, I will provide for his retirement. It's a good thing that everyone has needs. The more you learn, the more you can do. Fu Xiaogi thought for a moment and asked, "Sir, aren't you afraid that they will cancel their contracts and start their own businesses after they finish their studies?" I see that many of the people who asked for leave this year actually found another job to leave. Li Ju shook his head. This is just what I want. They have learned skills and broadened their horizons. What is the point of staying here? I have a lot of boring miscellaneous work here, but there are not so many important things for them to do. They set up their own businesses and spread my ideas and technology. Isn't that what I want? This is why I asked Leo Chen and others to find some reliable foreigners. A single flower does not make spring. The more people accept my ideas and the more people spontaneously devote themselves to my career, the sooner I can see my world of great harmony. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, Opening of the 100 Engineering Department. This year's New Year's Day is particularly exciting because of the good harvest and the participation of Dayan Club. Li Yuan put the Spring Festival Gala on the stage of Dayan Club. In addition to Li Yuan people who can come to watch the performance, people outside can also watch it for free. It was just dusk, and many people had gathered here. It is expected that there will be more people at noon. For this reason, Wu County Magistrate, Huang Zhi and others specially recruited a lot of men to maintain order. After 2 years of development, the current Qingshan opera has a relatively complete routine, evolving into a variety of ways such as water sleeves, stilts, and whisks. There is no feather and wing skills, but there is a hairpin flower skill. Because there are few occasions for folks to wear feathers, there are many occasions for hairpins. Just like the days of New Year's Day, Li Ju couldn't help but wear a small golden rice ear wrapped with red thread next to his scarf. Because Li Ju wears rice ears and wheat ears every year, the most popular hairpin flowers in Qingshan County are grain-themed hairpins, and new patterns can be turned out every year. Musi Clothing Store has launched a variety of simple and easy to make jewelry, such as silk yarn flowers, velvet flowers, paper flowers, and shavings flowers, which basically dominate the annual fashion styles in Qingshan and even Dasan County. Musi Clothing Store always takes the boutique route. They must make the best and most eye-catching jewelry that is easy to imitate. And Li Ju is the living sign. Li Ju, who doesn't like to decorate and dress up, often has some occasions that must be carefully dressed up. This is the best time for Musi Clothing Store to advertise. In a sense, Li Ju is also a fashion icon in Dasan County and even Hualien Road in the south. Today, the Dayan Club is wearing new clothes launched by Musi Clothing Store. It's okay to wear a jacket and a shirt. It is a multi-layered edge design, based on the existing ones. People who like it very much, and people who hate it dislike this design as a complicated design used by Noworish. But the shoes worn by those female characters are really beautiful. A butterfly fell on the tip of the shoe head, and with the steps of the person wearing it, the butterfly rose and fell, as if shuttling between flowers. At that time, this new pair of shoes set off the market. On the second day of the Lunar New Year, when people went shopping and visiting each other, almost every girl was wearing a pair of butterfly and flower shoes. Even men who pursue fashion were no exception, such as the father and son of Zhao County Magistrate, and the old and elegant Huang Zhi. Ordinary people made their own clothes and food, using blue and brown scraps of cloth to make butterflies. The rich used gauze, satin and silk to make clusters of flowers. Musi Clothing Store used the newly optimized spring technology to make trembling little butterflies, little damselflies and small flower branches, which were unique. Rich and poor people all wore new shoes, and as people traveled and did business, these shoes quickly became popular, as if they had wings, and then began to appear on other accessories. The reputation of Qingshan new style also appeared in people's minds again along with these inconspicuous and cute little things. If people in Jinling, Gusu, Kaiantang and even the cities in the north think seriously about the words Qingshan new style, they will suddenly find that Qingshan city has become a special existence without knowing it. It is almost synonymous with trend, whether in entertainment, food, clothing, housing and transportation, or other deeper fields. At this time, if someone questions Li Ju's miscellaneous knowledge, the person who raises it may first receive some doubts. But Kingshan City is so rich and interesting, their miscellaneous knowledge should have some real materials, right? I think what they say is quite reasonable. What is cultural output? Isn't this the simplest example? It is very difficult to output opinions alone. Most people are short-sighted. Without the benefits and advantages in front of them, it would be good if 1 in 10 people can listen to an opinion. Without Journey to the West and Romance of the Three Kingdoms, without Kingshan opera and Kingshan style, without merchants from all over the world gathering here, where would the yearning for it come from? Whether it was Yunnan, Zheng Shidao, Chun Zisheng, or the emperor who inexplicably placed Li Ju in the position of a fairly reliable junior, they were all convinced by what Kingshan Li Yuan brought out. In the first month of the year, the butterfly flower shoes of New Year's Day and the glass grass lanterns of Lantern Festival were shining. Li Ju was very satisfied. The flower shoes were really just beautiful shoes. They had no other use, except to stimulate people's recognition of Kingshan City. The glass grass lanterns were different. Until now, the potters have not figured out the process of mass producing large pieces of flat glass. However, as the glass lamps became popular, he made the formula for glass firing public, and wrote down the basic principles in 100 schools of miscellaneous studies. There will definitely be many people who will follow suit. If someone imitates, there will be competition, and competition will definitely urge them to continuously strive for better technology and lower costs. Someone will definitely conquer the flat glass technology. By then, he will spend money to buy it back, and give it to the potters to optimize it. Greenhouse technology has been summarized last year, and the data of rice-based fish ponds has also been established. This year's agricultural focus is to further optimize greenhouse technology and extract data, as well as test the availability of rice-based fish ponds. As for composting technology and breeding technology, they are old-fashioned topics every year, so there is no need to repeat them. After the Lantern Festival, people gradually returned to their posts, and Li Ju announced that several craftsman subjects in the school would be formally taught this year. A stone stirred up 1,000 waves, and suddenly the civilians in the entire Kingshan City became excited. They have waited for this day for too long. Those who waited outside the school tirelessly, in addition to waiting for the medical students' free clinics and practice opportunities, are waiting for this learning opportunity. The first batch of people who signed a contract with Li Ju to become a master of the 100 engineering department were potters. After 3 years of cooperation, he felt a sense of belonging to Li Yuan, and trusted Li Ju personally. In addition, Li Ju raised his salary again, and Tao Gong was very satisfied, and didn't care about his unique learning. Li Ju said that in addition to tuition fees, if his apprentice won the bounty in the future, he would pay the potter 1/3 of the bounty. With wealth and longevity, and a wife coming soon, the potter was the first to stand up and sign a lifelong contract with Li Yuan. He Gong signed a short-term contract, but he was reluctant to teach his skills to outsiders. Besides, he now had such a promising daughter and such an outstanding son-in-law, and his future was not necessarily tied to Li Yuan. However, he was also willing to teach everyone the basics of woodworking. The heirloom craftsmanship was not good, but the simple ones were still okay. In addition to the 2 most important craftsmen, Li Ju reported to the government and found his long-term blacksmith to start classes. Li Yuan had many long-term blacksmiths, one of whom had excellent skills. The ceremonial swords and machetes used by the government and the garrison, except for those uniformly distributed by the court, were basically made by this blacksmith. His smelting experience can even be said to be advanced, and Li Ju's springs were made thanks to his smelting technology. However, the blacksmith's concept was too advanced, and was not suitable for teaching. Smelting is inevitably linked to weapons. The current imperial court has extremely strict control over weapons, from the official mining of iron and copper mines to the registration system for blacksmiths, all of which are for the purpose of tracing weapons hidden by the people. Li Ju did not want to challenge the fragile nerves of the ruling class, so the blacksmith class could only be held in small classes. Everyone who signed up for the class would be treated as a blacksmith apprentice and directly registered as a blacksmith in the official civilian book. This was the idea that County Magistrate Wood came up with. With these 3 basic courses as a foundation, the Beigang department officially accepted apprentices and taught classes on the 3rd day of February. Chapter 265. People leaving the land and heading for the production line. The government has joined the joint venture of the 100 engineering department. The person who is responsible for registering various information and coordinating various affairs of the school is Wang Jiasheng, the former director of the Ministry of Engineering and the current Qingshan County teacher. There are two types of students recruited this time. Those who are muddle-headed and need to learn a craft to make a living are called pre-study by Li Ju, and those who have a certain foundation and want to move forward are called advanced study by Li Ju. Due to the low status of craftsmen, there are many people willing to learn engineering, and the preparatory class is quickly filled. There are not many people who are really willing to go on this road. Most of them are apprentices of Liu and people and other craftsmen, and some are people who follow Yu Fu and others to learn biology, agriculture, and medicine but can't learn anything. Seeing Wang Jiashu managing the affairs and the old father-in-law of the county magistrate coming to class, they also transferred to study. What is more magical is that there is a group of girls among the registered students, and they came together. They don't know how to read, and they only listen to the propaganda outside the Liuan display board for a few days, and finally signed up to learn smelting together. However, in the end, only 2 girls with better muscles and bones were admitted to the smelting, and the other girls were temporarily arranged to work as carpenters and potters. Li Ju thought this was very strange, so he asked Yu Yaoniang, who was also studying carpentry, to inquire about it carefully. Yu Yaoniang now acts like a big sister wherever she goes, and the new girls are quickly conquered by her. Yu Yaoniang smoothly found out their situation. They are basically girls from the 2 villages of Jeteng and Gizi. Some of them have lost their parents, or have been abandoned by their parents, or their husbands have died, or they are about to be sold like Yu Yaoniang and Ko later. In short, they have no one to rely on. In the first month of the year, they heard Jeteng mention that Li Yuan school would open this year to recruit apprentices. After discussing it, they took their food and ran away overnight. Such things happened one after another in the villages and towns around Qingshan City. 2 years ago, it was just people who couldn't make a living who wanted to try their luck, but now there are several girls who come here for a better life. What they have in common is that they don't have land to survive. Li Ju asked Director Wang and others to help visit some apprentices and workers, and the conclusions he got fully supported his guess. These women and middle-aged men who changed their careers basically left their hometowns because they lost their land or the land was barren. This day came earlier than he expected. He thought that the labor transfer would be later. What Li Ju did not expect was that as some people got rich first and the rich became richer, the first thing these people who made money first did was to buy land. When someone buys land, naturally someone loses their land. The reasons for losing land are nothing more than the common ones. Moreover, many families have a little savings, which does not mean that they can turn a blind eye to more money. Therefore, people without a pillar of the family, unwelcome baby girls and sick children, and children who can be sold for money are still commodities in the eyes of others. Commodities do not want to be slaughtered by others. People who have lost their land, that is, means of production, want to have a better life. They came here to try whether they can embark on a way of survival that does not rely on land. This is exactly the direction Li Ju hopes to see. A part of the people and land will be separated steadily without attracting anyone's attention or causing unrest. The only question is whether the remaining population will be enough to produce enough food as the population gradually shifts. The final foothold of this question is new seeds and planting techniques, such as greenhouses. Li Ju just raised the 2 subjects of agriculture and animal husbandry and medical skills to the level of academy this year. Yu Fu currently serves as the dean of the 2 academies. His main job, in addition to overall planning, is to teach entry-level knowledge. Last year, the second crop of the experimental field has not continued to reduce production. I don't know whether they have curbed the degradation in the 5th generation of seeds, or the seeds have degraded to the limit. In short, everyone was relieved when they got the second crop. After degradation to the present, the yield has been reduced by 40% compared with the first crop in the first year. The remaining 60% is still several times the current per acre yield of grains, and it is still a variety of divine objects. Yu Fu's suggestion is that, if this year's seeds still have not degraded, then this year's autumn harvest seeds can be promoted in Qingshan City. After Li Ju got the data of the 6th generation of seeds, he felt that Yu Fu's suggestion was correct. At the beginning, they could not take too big a step and could only plant new varieties on a small scale little by little. It is expected that it will take 5 years before the new grain varieties can replace the status of coarse grains. The optimization progress of rice is very slow, and it cannot replace the existing rice varieties for the time being. The efficiency of artificial male removal and pollination is extremely low. Li Ju can only take out more modern varieties as female parents in order to find varieties that do not need artificial seed cultivation. Most hybrid rice has no breeding ability and tastes poor. Only hybrid rice that can be bred and will not degenerate is worth cultivating. The yield of those naturally fertile rice varieties has not increased significantly compared with ancient times, but there are many more choices for taste, such as long grain rice, selenium-rich rice, pearl rice, peach blossom fragrance, and various appearances and tastes, which greatly enrich people's dining tables. Anyway, in this era, it is not as important as hybrid rice. If it were not for selecting the right female parent, Li Ju would not necessarily take out these new seeds. When the enrollment is over, it is the best time of spring. The spring is blooming, the willows are long and the peach blossoms are burning, and the seedlings are beautiful and budding. It is infinitely beautiful. It was at this time that Li Ju received Yunan's letter. In addition to daily greetings, the letter also mentioned that Princess Chen Guiyang and her husband Dai Yanhao would come to Jinling this summer, mainly to worship the ancestors of the current royal family. In order to welcome this distinguished guest, Yunnan wanted to borrow Zhao Sanjiu, who was surveying the market in Jinling, to prepare some Jiangnan-style clothes and jewelry for the princess. Of course, borrowing Sanjiu was a lie, and telling Li Ju that His Majesty the Emperor had adopted Li Ju's method was true. Li Ju was happy when he figured this out. He had never seen it before. The Emperor and Empress, who were always labeled as I'm the only one and royal dignity, would also make concessions for their daughters. This is a rare warmth under the feudal system. Looking back a few generations, there were probably only Li Shimin and Princess Jinliang, Emperor Yizhen of Tang and Princess Tongchang. However, Li Ju's expression changed again immediately. The emperor who sacrificed his children's happiness for his own dignity and the emperor who made concessions for the happiness of his children were actually the same in essence. They both acted within the framework of doing whatever they want under the imperial power, but the former's desires were for himself, while the latter included his children and the scope of desire. I just don't know if this emperor can include more people in his desires, whether it is for everyone's sake or for the stability and durability of his own rule. It is always a good thing for the sun to shine on more people. Chapter 266 Preparations before going south. In the capital, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Imperial Clan Affairs, and the Ministry of Rights, which were responsible for the affairs of the royal family, had already been busy in the first month of the year. The departure time of the princess and her husband was tentatively scheduled for March. On the surface, they were just going to worship their ancestors because of a dream, but in fact the princess would live in Jinling for 1 to 3 years, and in the meantime, it was also about how to handle this marriage in a low-key manner. The emperor strongly demanded the withdrawal of all the privileges that young Master Yang had obtained because of his status as a husband, including but not limited to his title of Marquis Diang, his house, his land, and the first-class imperial edict bestowed on his mother to raise his status. The ministers were overwhelmed by this, but they dared not complain. If they angered Taifu Yang and aroused the anger of the literati and made a big fuss, causing the princess's divorce to go unsuccessfully, I'm afraid the emperor would be able to twist their heads off. Fortunately, the emperor had the biggest handle on the husband, which was Miss Liu Shana. It's nothing for the husband to have a concubine. The princess hasn't had any news for a long time, and the husband has a concubine to have a child. Although it's not glorious, everyone can understand it. At most, the princess's status is above, which makes the husband defend her. However, looking back, all the marriages between princesses and husbands in all dynasties are like this. Regardless of whether the princess can give birth or not, the husband can take a concubine, and the children of the concubine are all recorded under the princess's name. Even if the princess dies, the same is true. After the princess dies, the children born by the husband's concubine are still the princess's children in terms of etiquette. The biggest problems are arranged in order of severity. The husband's marriage to Yu Yaoniang was forced. Yu Yaoniang herself didn't want to, and Yu Yaoniang insisted that she was forced to do so. So the husband's action was considered rape. The husband's taking a concubine was not reported to the princess, which is not a big deal at best, but disrespectful at worst, on the premise that the princess clearly refused to acknowledge Yu Yaoniang's child. The child was forcibly planted on the princess. Because even if the children of concubines are considered princesses according to etiquette, it is only an etiquette, and it does not mean that in fact the children must be said to be born by the princess. Just like all the princes and princesses in the palace call the queen mother, but everyone knows that only Princess Yu Yaoniang is the queen's daughter. The prince consort and Madame Yang's forced planting is disrespectful at the least, and it is a confusion of blood at the most. Yu Yaoniang must be alive and well, and the nanny who took the initiative to publicize the princess's pregnancy must also be alive as a witness. Only at this time did it show how important the princess's previous kindness and benevolence were. Her great mercy saved her crucial witnesses, not counting the necessary ceremonial guards and luggage for the princess's travel. His Majesty the Emperor and the Queen had already privately stuffed her with as many as 30 carriages. Just looking at the clothes, shoes, and socks for all 4 seasons, 8 carriages were filled. There were not many snacks prepared. The roadside dishes were full of oil and salt, and the taste was average. It was not worth the effort. It would be better to notify each post station to prepare local delicacies and drinks in advance for the princess. The princess's maid Zyking has lived up to her name these days, cheerfully directing the packing of the princess's dowry and other things. Yu Yaoniang not only takes her sisters to read books every day, but also reads books when she returns to the bedroom. Not only does she read books herself, but Yu Yaoniang is also forced to read books in the study. Yu Yaoniang was originally a beautiful girl from a small family, with no worries about food and drink, but she had never been to school, and really only knew some common words. Later, after being adopted by Madame Yang, she learned some poems, songs, and lyric music under Madame Yang's arrangement, but it was to please the prince consort. It was not until she was forced into the palace and settled down in the princess's bedroom that Yu Yaoniang seriously learned some serious articles. Yu Yaoniang saw that she was essentially smart, so he taught her to read for entertainment when she was free. Yu Yaoniang was essentially cowardly and kind. Being a grain of sand in the princess's marriage had made her ashamed and angry. Now that she had been taught one-on-one by the princess, she was even more grateful and wished she could call her teacher. Unfortunately, she felt that her status was low, and she had caused the princess to fall into the eye of the storm of divorce. She was full of guilt, and she couldn't even say master. Yu Yaoniang saw it, but didn't care. She didn't teach her for Yu Yaoniang's gratitude and guilt. It was just that she happened to know, and Yu Yaoniang didn't know. Not only Shana, but also other palace eunuchs were the same. Teaching people to read is much more interesting than other things. One by one, ignorant people who are eager to understand accept knowledge, and their one's demise gradually become clear and bright. This sense of accomplishment is great. Zyking counted the princess's belongings. She was literate, and now she learned a set of numbering and grading methods. She was more adept at managing the warehouse, and she also had a deeper understanding of everything about the princess. After counting the princess's decorations, she spread out the booklet and sat on the flower stool outside to sulk. Yu Yaoniang was lying on the couch, basking in the sun, and reading a book. He looked up at the shadowy figures outside and said, "Zyking, what's wrong with you?" Seeing that they had something to say, Yu Yaoniang stood up obediently and retreated to another room. Zyking walked in angrily, stood next to Yu Yaoniang, flipped through the book, and said, "You don't know this until you check it out. It's really shocking. Many of the jewelry, satin and other items that the master brought as a dowry have been taken away by that person. She is really amazing. She only takes those that don't have imperial inscriptions." The she in Zyking's mouth is of course the wife of the Grand Tutor. Yu Yaoniang took the booklet, looked at it, and said with a smile, "She used to be my mother-in-law. It's no big deal for her to use my things. Just consider it as thank you for taking care of her over the years. But this longevity peach, that fertility giving wine, and the pearl curtain, these 3 things are my favorites. They must be returned. Zyking smiled. Okay, master, I was just afraid that you would just let it go because you thought she was your mother-in-law. Chen Guiyang said, if my mother-in-law really treats me with the attitude of caring for the younger generation, I will also treat her with respect. Since she can't do it, there is no need for me to keep clinging to her. The queen came in person to see the progress of Chen Guiyang's cleaning here. As soon as she came in, she heard Chen Guiyang's words, sneered and said, I thought you didn't feel any pain, even if you were pricked by a needle. Turns out you know what give and take is. Mother. Chen Guiyang put down the book and stood up. He bowed first, then replaced Yuan to hold the queen's arm, and walked with her inside. I know you are referring to Miss Shan. I still say that she is a real victim, and I can't harm her anymore. I may not like her, but I can't torture her out of selfishness. The queen said, where on earth did you learn these heresies? You are a princess and you are rich. The 3,000 miles of Chengyang are your fiefdom, and the 10,000 households in the capital are your fiefdom. You should live as you wish. The only wish of your father and me, at least my only wish, is that you are happy in this life. I'm very happy, mother. Chen Yang didn't say who she was discussing those issues with, but showed a sincere smile. There are many problems that have troubled me for a long time, and I have figured them out. I live a life of luxury, with fine clothes and delicious food, and a prince consort. Young Master Yang and the others are now in my eyes, but they are just flies that can be easily separated. It's not so much that they make me unhappy, but it's better to say that they confuse me. I used to be so confused. Why am I such a person? But I'm matched with such a husband? Other women in the world, except for my mother and the ladies, don't their marriages have more difficulties? It wasn't until I figured it out that I felt relieved. This is all thanks to Chapter 267 Ancestors above all. In the end, the queen still didn't get the name Li Ju out of Chen Guiyang. But Chen Guiyang didn't have much chance to communicate with Li Ju. After returning to the palace, her letters were naturally handled by the eunuchs and the internal affairs department. No matter how smart Zhang Zubu was, he couldn't help her. The queen checked everywhere and saw the quail-like Shanjie in her daughter's study. She looked Shanjie up and down 18 times, but couldn't see what was so special about her. In the end, she could only sneer and pretend not to see it. Ziking counted the dresses while asking the princess, when the master arrives in Jinling, he will receive the ladies and young ladies. He needs to prepare 3 sets of dresses for each season and each occasion. They are only enough for 1 year. Master, should the rest be made in Beijing and sent to him? Let's make them in Jinling. Chen Guiyang shook her feet. On her toes were 2 light pearl-studded 8 treasure-trembling branches, butterflies and falling flowers. As she shook, the pearls, gems and satin flickered. I can't wait to see the craftsmanship of Jiangnan. Look, this falling butterfly is so beautiful. It is said that there is a big difference between Beijing craftsmanship and Suzhou craftsmanship. I still want to see the Jinling ones. The queen did not pay attention to these trivial matters. She only heard that her daughter was really going to live in Jinling for 3 years, and immediately her eyes were filled with tears like mist. You heartless girl, you really want to live outside for 3 years. At that time, your father said that it would be fine just to pretend, but you insisted that it would be hard to stop the people from gossiping about you, so you had to go. I knew that you would make trouble again. You really want to run away and live for 3 years. Do you know how old your mother is this year? You still run away. The palace people in the room heard that the queen was so anxious that she even blurted out the words she learned from the folk when she was a child, and they couldn't help but turn their heads away to hold back their laughter. Chen Guiyang hugged the empress's shoulders like a little girl and said with a smile, since you use the ancestors as an excuse, of course it's better to go in person, otherwise wouldn't it be ungrateful? The ancestors are watching us in heaven. Mother, you are 28 years old this year, and your daughter can serve you for a half decade after returning. These 3 years will be my apology to the ancestors. Please don't bother with me because of my youth and ignorance, and continue to bless us with longevity and the longevity of Dayang. Mother, what do you think? The queen flicked her forehead unhappily, but didn't say no. She and the emperor both hoped that their daughter would just go through the motions and come back, but since it involved the ancestors, they didn't dare to be too fake. Not believing in Buddhism and Taoism does not mean being a materialist. In fact, 90% of people are superstitious about ancestors, gods, cause and effect, and reincarnation. They don't believe in religion and burn incense, and send oil to temples, and they don't worry about fighting between the two families. Even if you put a big willow tree there and say that it has become a spirit, there will still be a lot of people going to worship it. The emperor and the empress are very typical of this situation. They have no faith, but they burn incense and paper money for their ancestors. Chen Guiyang brought up their ancestors, and they always felt that their ancestors were watching them with their eyes open, so they couldn't say anything to stop them. The queen was too angry. When she looked at Ziking's packing, she felt that everything was not pleasing to the eye. She wanted to change here and there. Even the dress that had been prepared was disliked by the queen. She ordered to find someone to make a more fashionable one. How can the fashion in our capital be the same as that in Jiangnan? If you don't come up with something that can calm the situation, do you expect the princess to be laughed at by the southerners as rich and dull? Look back a few decades ago, what clothes did the concubine Shu bring when she entered the palace, and what did the concubine Chen bring every year in Jiangnan? Send someone to Jiangnan to copy the samples immediately. Of course, it is impossible to copy the samples in Jiangnan. There is no time. Chen Guiyang acted like a spoiled child and acted stupid, which made the queen reluctantly agree to ask the concubine Shu to help manage Chen Guiyang's private clothes. The formal dresses are all standardized. Even if the patterns are old-fashioned, as long as the details are in place, no one can find fault. The most important thing is private clothes. If the private clothes are not good looking, everything is useless. My daughter is going to divorce her husband. The clothes must shock the people in Jiangnan, otherwise nothing will be spread. The princess's power can make people dare not say anything to her face, but it can't control the whispers behind her back. And what Chen Guiyang feared most on this trip was the whispers. Everyone went to pass on the message to concubine Shu, re-examine the fabrics and needlework maids, and it was another busy day. Every time the queen inspected, she would bring up such a thing, because she disliked everyone's poor preparations. Everyone was used to it. Who is not a mother who loves her daughter? Concubine Shu quickly replied that she would respond to anything before the princess returned to the palace today, and she would come to see after dinner today. Everyone was relieved, and the queen found a special point on the accompanying list, pointed to a name on it and asked, "Are you going to take Yu Yaoniang with you?" Chen Guiyang nodded. "I'm afraid that, if I leave her in the capital, she will be accidentally killed by her parents or one of her sisters and brothers, if I don't pay attention." The queen was so angry that she was speechless. But what Chen Guiyang said was really right. When the emperor and the empress ate delicious snacks, they would always think of sending a portion to the princess. Chen Guiyang had been away for 3 years, and there was no guarantee that they would not eliminate the culprit when they missed their daughter. Okay, you can go. But the journey is long, and if there is any problem with the child in her belly, I can't do anything about it, and you are not allowed to do anything about it. Chen Guiyang didn't care. She doesn't want the child herself, so it's aborted. It's not a pity. Yu Yaoniang really didn't want the child in her belly. To her, the son-in-law was no different from a rape. This child would only remind her how miserable she was in the past. Over the past few months, the child has grown up, bringing her endless pain, swollen feet, painful and falling internal organs, nausea, constipation, sudden dizziness and black eyes. If abortion was not life-threatening, she would not have kept it at all. The queen didn't bother about Yu Yaoniang anymore. After the divorce was settled, the girl could go wherever she wanted. If Kainsha could find a good husband and live happily in the future, she would give this girl a big gift as a thank you for saving her daughter from the fire pit. The capital was busy preparing for the princess's trip to the south, and Jinling was no exception. Jinling had the former palace, the Spring and Autumn Palace, which was where Fang Zhu stayed after he led his army to conquer Jiangnan. Jinling reported to the court and obtained permission. This palace would be the princess residence in Jiangnan. The people of Jinling were shocked by the princess's favor. At that time, His Majesty the Emperor was still the prince, serving as the governor of the 4 Huajiang routes. It was the beginning of the empire's demise, and there were still endless military affairs. The prince passed by Jinling to quell the sea threat, and needed to stay and rest. The governor of Jinling suggested that the prince stay temporarily in the spring and autumn palace. The prince did not dare to overstep his authority as his grandfather's residence. He only checked the preservation and camped in the suburbs. Now the emperor actually gave the princess the spring and autumn palace, which he dared not to cross when he was the crown prince. No wonder the old men in Jinling were stunned. The former Jinling governor, who was so old that he could hardly walk, spitted water at Yujin, who was standing opposite. Yunnan said, "Don't be too nervous. Since ancient times, the palaces were mostly for show and to cope with a few days. Those who live there for a long time will most likely find other comfortable places to live." The current governor asked, "Do you want to buy some exquisite gardens and houses near the Longling ancestral temple so that the princess can visit and pay respects?" "No, it's still in time to make a decision when the princess comes." Yunnan waved his hand, but didn't tell him the reason. The princess didn't really come to pay respects to her ancestors. Instead of building a house next to their ancestral temple, it would be better to check out the best places in Jinling and the surrounding mountains and rivers in advance, and prepare more of those beautiful and gorgeous gardens, which might please the princess more. Chapter 268, Jinling Reception. Finally, under the guidance of the officials of the Ministry of Internal Affairs who arrived in advance and were in charge of the royal affairs, the people of Jinling renovated the spring and autumn palace. They decorated the palace where the princess lived in advance in the popular style of Jiangnan, and all the furnishings, flowers, and trees were renovated. In addition to the spring and autumn palace, several other courtyards and gardens of wealthy families were also selected as alternatives, including the Yang family, the first weaving family in Jinling. The Yang family is famous for weaving various satins, brocades, and even zhuanghua. The aunt of the previous generation, Yu Yaoniang, improved the spinning machine, and the spun thread can be woven into the crisp and thick Songjiang satin. Songjiang satin is thick and fine with a strong skeleton, and the matte satin surface is in line with the aesthetics of the upper class in the capital, and it is one of the most important tributes in Jinling. The Yang family had built this courtyard after the young Yang family received the imperial edict to welcome the emperor to express their gratitude. However, the previous emperor died before he came. The current emperor rarely went out after ascending the throne, or at least he didn't like to act like an emperor. The courtyard was not completely built before the enclosure was stopped. In the end, only the main courtyard was completed, which was 2/3 smaller than the originally planned several hundred acres. It is now very suitable for the princess to rest. Sanjiu, who was writing a plan in Jinling, was invited to the courtyard at this time. Together with others, he was responsible for the preliminary preparations for the princess's residence. The fabrics of Liyuan are widely used in soft furnishings because of their wide width, patterns, and density, and the best color attention and least fear of fading. Almost all the window screens and curtains for the 4 seasons are produced by Liyuan. Even if the weaving Yang, Liu, and Zhu families are extremely jealous, they can't snatch this business away. It's not that they can't weave cloth with a width of more than 10 feet, but the cost is too high, and the patterns and colors are very limited. They can't compare to Liyuan, who can easily give out a lot, and even can take out a 10-foot wide thick jackwood silk satin, which can be made into mattresses, sheets, and bed fences without splicing. Sanjiu, who is diligent and good at reading people's eyes, quickly got familiar with the people who came to work with her. Together, they got the princess's usual style of doing things and speaking from the people in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and decided to decorate the entire courtyard in a light red tone. This tone is unique in the shaded and lush Jiangnan gardens. Jiangnan gardens rarely use such bright decorative tones. Su Gong's favorite is the green and gold series, and various red and purple colors are generally used only as embellishments. This time, contrary to the norm, the main color is a bright golden red tone, and the gem bonsai displayed are almost all black stemmed red flower varieties such as peach, pomegranate, red plum, and crabapple. The conflicting colors are combined by the delicate and unique aesthetic painters, and the conflict becomes gorgeous. creating a unique cinnabar color in the quiet Jiangnan water village style. During the process of supervising the production, Sanjiu heard completely different princesses from different people. Some said that the princess was gentle, obedient, and peaceful, having a broad mind and a broad temperament, while others said that the princess was tough and difficult to deal with. Even the emperor could not change her mind, but there was one thing that was consistent. That is, when mentioning the princess, it was inevitable to mention that she had no children after marrying the prince consort, and she did not allow the prince consort to take concubines. Some people felt sorry, while others felt that the princess was intolerant. No matter which one, they could not help but talk about the fact that she had no children as the most important thing. Zhao Sanjiu felt very uncomfortable, but because he was alone outside, he did not want to attract gossip, so he did not show it. However, the reason why right and wrong are right and wrong is that it cannot be avoided if you want to. Sanjiu is less than 25 years old this year. She has been spoiled by Li Jiu for 3 years. She has the vigor of a young girl, the bearing of a mistress, and the tenderness and sweetness of a young woman. With such a bright and beautiful face, I don't know how many people's hearts have been moved, and there are even some girls with different preferences. If it weren't for Yanan, Yujin and others looking after her, and the protection of Yang, Liu, Zhu and other local weaving machines who ordered the spinning machine in Liyuan, I don't know how many hungry ghosts would have planned for her. This time is no exception. The Internal Affairs Department has not only eunuchs, but also those serious officials and clerks. The people responsible for the decoration and renovation of the other courtyards are not only women, but also many men. After leaving the inner room, it is more men who paint the tiles and plants outside. Only the place where the princess lives and receives guests is mainly responsible for women. As time goes by, men will pass by and encounter Sanjiu again and again near the area where she does handicrafts or is responsible. After so many times, others have figured it out. There are sour remarks, gossips, and even rumors and slanders from those who cannot get what they want. If it weren't for the fact that the female workers and guards of Liyuan brought by Sanjiu are not easy to mess with, I'm afraid there would be physical conflicts. In addition to these troublesome people, there are also people who give good advice. Look, Chen Zhenjie, the housekeeper of the Zhu family, who was conquered by Sanjiu's new bed curtains, just stopped 2 female workers who gossiped behind her back. However, just as she turned around, the women behind her started to gossip again, saying that Sanjiu's bad style attracted other men, and that flies don't bite eggs without cracks, and one hand can't clap. Chen Zhenjie stopped drinking and couldn't control the other side. He turned around and saw Sanjiu sitting under the shade of a tree, stringing gemstone beads to make bead patterns. She was handsome and beautiful, with calm eyebrows and eyes. Her nimble fingers fluttered up and down like butterflies and birds. She looked like a fairy in the painting, weaving clouds and mist in the sky. Chen Zhenjie felt bored, so he sat down on the stone bench opposite Sanjiu and said, "You just lie there and let people talk about you? I get angry just listening to it. Can I still argue with them? Sister, my time and what I say are very precious. If they want to listen to my scolding, they have to pay. You don't have to worry about me. They like to talk, and if they can make me unhappy, I will lose to them." Sanjiu was really calm and should have been angry 800 years ago. She was so beautiful, single, and lucky enough to become one of the most important people in Li Garden. There would always be people who would be jealous, but it was just that some people's hearts were floating. Think about it, sister. Her Royal Highness the Princess is one of the most honorable people in the world, but she still gets talked about. I'm just a nobody. Chen Zhenjie said, "You're right. It's funny to talk about it. Do you know the old Chen family? The one who just gave birth to 2 sons actually looks down on Her Royal Highness the Princess. Just now, she was shouting in the front yard, saying things like the princess can't cut off the incense for others, and she's not a complete woman if she can't give birth to a son." I laughed my ass off. Her Royal Highness the Princess doesn't even have to worry about it herself. People don't even know who the old Chen family is. Immediately, 2 people from the Ministry of Internal Affairs threw the old Chen family out. The old Chen family is the old man of Mr. Yang. They have more face than those wives of small families. They really lost all their face in 18 lifetimes. Sanjiu curled her lips. Stop talking about this. It's not good to be contaminated with bad luck. Chen Zhenjie knew that this was to prevent others from hearing and saying that the two of them were talking about each other behind people's backs, so she quickly followed Sanjiu's words and changed the subject. Yes, you are right. Hey, is this an embroidered curtain for the princess? Yes. I heard that the princess was familiar with the Shangyuan collection and Jiaxuan long and short poems that my master copied out last year. She also made a riddle of the moon rises on the branches of the willows in the first month of this year. I thought that the princess must like the poems of Xin Jiaxuan, Liu Aijushi, and Lu Fangwen very much, so I picked out a few sentences that were copied this year and made embroidered curtains according to the seasons. This curtain with a gold background is most suitable to set off the blue sky in autumn. Chen Zhenjie touched the base fabric that Sanjiu was beading. It was a plain brocade with sparse gold weaving. There was no pattern, only a beautiful golden spot. How do you say this? Chapter 269. Look at the mountains, water, and places. Sanjiu used the technique of painting poems in the embroidered curtains, a typical Jiangnan decorative style, with small scenes and story pictures with their own themes. Previously, the lawsuit over which design company to choose for the decorative style and pictures had reached the director of the Internal Affairs Department and Yunnan. Because the official supervisor of the Internal Affairs Department was also a scholar, he preferred this kind of decorative style with a strong literary atmosphere, and finally agreed to use Sanjiu's proposal. Others only knew that the appearance and style proposed by Sanjiu were all adopted, but for some reason, some rumors were spread because of this incident. Sanjiu was very proud of herself. She was a well-educated and knowledgeable person who memorized many poems. Her daughter was smart and beautiful, and she was no worse than the scholar, maybe even better. She took out the embroidered pattern and explained excitedly. I looked at the collection of paintings given by the master. Autumn in the north is characterized by blue sky and golden ginkgo trees. We also have a street of fallen leaves here. On good days, everything is golden. It's a pity that I didn't have the chance to see it, but my daughter has seen it. The flowers and trees in this garden shed their leaves directly without turning yellow, which makes the scenery less beautiful. So the embroidered curtains are made of golden yellow to make up for the missing color. For the theme, I used Xin Jiaxuan's poem 1,000 Miles of Clear Autumn in Shu. The golden and green mountains and rivers are boundless and autumn is endless, and the red scarf and green sleeves look for the hero's tears in Yuki's poem. Chen Zhen's family was almost confused by her. Stop, 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 I don't understand what wet and dry, porcelain and pottery mean. After interrupting Sanjiu, Chen Zhen's family said with envy, it's great that you can also write poems. I grew up with our young lady, but I only recognize a few words. I think you are really not inferior to our young lady. Knowing a little poetry is not a big deal. Our master started teaching poetry from Lishengduyan. Heaven and earth, rain and wind, mainland and sky are so easy to remember. Remember this, and then you can remember and recognize the boundless fallen leaves rustle down, and the endless Yangtze River rolls in. Sanjiu quickly embroidered the 14-character poem on the corner, and then removed it with a knife. Chen Zhenjie shook his head. Forget it, I can't learn it either, and I won't be able to use it in the future. Sanjiu remembered what Li Ju said to others. It doesn't matter if you can only learn a little. It's a good thing to learn a poem and appreciate the meaning of a poem. Sanjiu said, even if you understand one more poem, it's good. We live by the river, and the endless Yangtze River rolls in. As she spoke, Sanjiu embroidered a freehand landscape curtain, and especially changed the silk thread to embroider the part where the Yangtze River sinks into the sky. Chen Zhenjie didn't quite understand what he was saying. When Sanjiu finished embroidering a corner, Chen Zhenjie picked up the canvas and couldn't help but praise, what a great craftsmanship. Although it's just a few simple strokes, it embroiders the autumn river. Sanjiu said, this is a painting, embroidery with painting. What I have is nothing. We have an embroidery sample painter at home, who can do anything. The embroidery pieces selected this time are all drafts made from embroidery samples. Chen Zhen's wife said again, no wonder your craft was chosen in the end, it's so fresh. Hey, if you use this method to embroider a picture of 100 children, it will definitely be more beautiful than the one in that year's picture. Why don't you use a picture of 100 children as the subject matter? The one from old Chen's family used a picture of 100 children. If the supervisor hadn't insisted on choosing yours, maybe the curtain hanging in the embroidery room now would be old Chen's picture of 100 children. We have been fooling around all our lives. How could I not know her ability? She has some embroidery skills, but as for her thoughts, 10,000 of them can't compare to one of you. It's because the picture of 100 children she chose is the most auspicious, and the princess will definitely like it. But with your embroidery, you have to guess what the princess is thinking. Sanjiu thought of the secret letter sent by Li Ju, and thought to herself, the princess is about to divorce. What's the point of having a picture of 100 children? Besides, even if the princess doesn't want a divorce, the picture of 100 children may not necessarily suit the princess's preferences. I don't know whether the princess likes the picture of 100 children, but it is certain that the princess likes Di Gangbu's poems and Xinjiaxuan's lyrics. Sanjiu just smiled and said, the old one used for the 100 children picture doesn't show my skills. Every household out there makes them. How many can I get? Go to my house in a few days and I'll ask for a sample of the 100 children picture to show you. It's really vivid and lively. Every child looks like a living person. Chen Zhen's family was half believing and half doubting. In her opinion, the embroidery of this batch of embroiderers was already amazing. Although the old Chen family was not selected, they actually made a set of 100 children picture in secret, just waiting to be used, so that they can take it out and show off their skills and suppress Sanjiu's embroidery painting. Sanjiu and the old Chen family had a direct competition, and they must know the old Chen family's exquisite skills. But Sanjiu still didn't take it seriously, which made Chen Zhen's family very curious about the 100 children picture that Sanjiu mentioned. Of course, Sanjiu couldn't let Chen Zhen see the embroidery sample made according to the painter's painting immediately, because she couldn't go back to Qingshan in a short time. In addition to interior decoration for several villas, where the princess might stay, she also had to continue to check out Jinling. Purchasing industries and preparing weaving factories are both very demanding. If she made a mistake in her inspection and chose the wrong address for the Liuan first weaving factory, or if she did not investigate carefully and caused the price of the industry purchased by Li Ju to increase too little, she would cry to death. Li Ju had previously asked her to take charge of the Liuan first textile factory for a month, where Sanjiu initially understood the meaning and management system of mechanized production. In addition to Sanjiu's 3 years of experience in running the music clothing store, in modern society, Sanjiu is already a manager who has just begun to see the way. Li Ju's weaving factory will be very dependent on water resources in the future. Water potential, energy and ship navigation capacity are both very important. Sanjiu mainly looks at the vacant land along the river, especially the wasteland, that is difficult to cultivate. The price of wasteland is low, and it is suitable for buying large tracts of land. Moreover, wasteland cannot grow any food, so using it to set up a factory will not affect the harvest of crops. Most of the wasteland by the river is abandoned. Only a few of the wasteland with particularly comfortable locations have been used to build small sheds. They are used for herding cattle, night watch, ferrying, and tea stalls. They appear from time to time, but they are not common. The few pieces of land that Sanjiu pays more attention to are all on the outskirts of Jinling. The largest piece is located between the river and its tributaries. It is a continuous hillside with weeds growing on it. There are only a few scattered families on the hillsides that are not suitable for farming because the soil is too poor. The nearest settlement area is Yaochen Temple, which is the Yaochen Temple where Fu Xiaogi once lived and met the fourth girl. Sanjiu didn't know the story of Yaochen Temple. She just walked around Yaochen Temple twice more to confirm the situation of her neighbors. Even so, she was discovered by the host, Master Wang. Master Wang would not take the initiative to talk to female relatives, but Sanjiu's appearances increased, which inevitably attracted the attention of everyone in the temple. Master Liang was worried that if he did this too often, it would attract gossips from others, so he took the opportunity, when Sanjiu brought a few people, to invite Sanjiu to the temple for tea, so that he could carefully ask why this female donor appeared so frequently. Sanjiu didn't want to hide it from him, so she just said that the master of the family wanted to buy some land to build a manor, and she came to choose a suitable place for the master. Master Liang understood immediately that Sanjiu was attracted by the nearby hilltop, and he didn't care who his neighbors were. It seemed that Sanjiu's master was well educated, and maybe with more people, he could contribute more believers to the temple and light more sea lanterns. But he had no say in the matter. This is a bit unfortunate. The fields nearby, including the house, are owned by a nobleman. Although the nobleman himself does not come here, he is not short of money, so it may not be easy to buy them. Sanjiu smiled and asked, then why did the nobleman agree to let you set up a temple here? Master Liang glanced at the temple behind him and said, many years ago, there was a flood in Jinling. You were still young. I heard that the local floods affected thousands of households, and I saved many babies, but had nowhere to settle down, so let me choose a place to stay temporarily. I say temporary, but in fact, as long as I continue to help the poor and raise orphans, the word temporary will never end. Hearing this, Sanjiu said, then I'm relieved. Since the nobleman is a kind and good person, my master should be able to take over this place. Thank you for your guidance, master. If we really become neighbors in the future, I will treat you and the children to tea and fruit. Chapter 270, Cleaning up the family business. Sanjiu preferred the hilltop next to Yaochen Temple. It was large, had good water flow, was less populated, and was convenient for building a dam. However, Li Ju had to decide what to do. She was only responsible for according this place. In addition to the hilltop next to Yaochen Temple, the other places were close and far, large, and small. After Li Ju bought them, he could really use them to build a manor. The current Li Garden in Qingshan County is too small to be inhabited. People who came later and started families almost all lived in the barren mountains, schools, and imperial manors. Jinling is much more prosperous than Qingshan. If Li Garden is to be a separate courtyard in Jinling, according to Li Ju's personality, it is likely that he will recruit all kinds of long-term and short-term workers like Li Garden in Qingshan. Since he has suffered a loss once, he must plan ahead this time. While taking care of the decoration task, Sanjiu wrote a thick record of her experience in the investigation and sent it to Li Ju. She also inquired about the current owners of various plots of land. Most of them were ownerless wastelands. It would be enough to give some money to the local village. If Li Ju was willing to recruit workers in the village, he might not even have to pay. There had been no news from the owner of the land next to Yaochen Temple. Sanjiu asked Master Liang to help send a letter. Master Liang agreed readily, but there was no response to the letter. How could there be a response? Master Liang's letter had to be forwarded through layers before it could reach the final owner. Each link might delay it for several days or even half a month. The letter delivery journey, which was originally a month long, was delayed for half a year in these branches and sections before it was delivered to the destination. However, the owner of the land had just set off to the south, and the letter was collected for her to read when she returned in the future. Of course, Master Liang and Sanjiu would not know about all the things behind this. Although Sanjiu liked this hill the most, he could only plan to fail to take it. But it didn't matter. Li Ju didn't ask for it to be done in one step. Besides the weaving industry, Li Ju is also considering other industries, and there will definitely be other factories that need to be located in the future. If there is no response in 1 year, there are still 2 or 3 years. When that time comes, Li Ju's industry will have a pivotal position in Jinling. Not to mention this hilltop, even better places will be easily acquired. These are all things to be considered later. At this moment, Li Ju is sorting out his industry in Qingshan County. An inventory on the 39th day before the new year made him suddenly realize that his stall was a bit too big. A big stall requires a lot of people. There must be a lot of things to do, and the efficiency of the advancement of various things will be affected by the many people. Li Ju decided to take advantage of the opportunity when everyone was working in the fields during the busy farming season and the various side industries were reduced to the minimum operating line, to do all the things that should be done so that he could get rid of the burden and go into battle lightly during the slack farming season. Li Ju often collects and arranges a single industry, but this is the first time to sort it out completely. So this year, Fu Xiaoguya didn't even go to the exam, but helped Li Ju. Now, Li Ju's main industries, in addition to the farm, are mainly the first textile factory, honeycomb coal, cement, Kingshan pen, oil press, soap, and fragrance pills and other daily chemical fake production and real unpacking lines. In addition, there are music clothing store, Liuji goods store, and road maintenance team that participate in the form of shares. In addition to those that have been put on the right track, there are also glass and glass firing workshops and their auxiliary smelting kilns, postal stations, livestock breeding, and silver mirrors and farm tools waiting to be ordered a little further away. In addition, there are purely auxiliary schools, model houses, day and club, and printing workshops. This is the part of the industrial line, which is related to production. In addition to production, there is also distribution, which involves a series of things more related to prices and people's livelihood, such as the account office's entry and exit, the distribution of local markets, Jiangnan markets, Dayang markets, and overseas markets. Although everything except farming has not been carried out and maintained at a low level of activity, so many things together still give Li Ju a headache. At this time, the inadequacy of Wu Guanjie is revealed. Wu Guanjie is not good at keeping Chengdu, and it is impossible for him to make such a large number of things active. Sanjiu has the ability, but Li Ju does not want her to work for a lifetime. Instead, he hopes that Sanjiu will have her own industry. Sanjiu managed the music clothing store so well, and later took over the textile factory, and did it well. It would be a waste of talent to work for him only. Li Ju himself has even less time to take care of chores. The more chores he has, the less time he has to copy books and maps. Books or maps, none of them can be used directly after being copied from modern times. He must understand them thoroughly first. How can he have the time to understand them thoroughly if he doesn't have time? It took him twice as long to copy Journey to the West as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. This is also because he has more and more mundane affairs in the past year, so he has to compress other time. However, Li Ju's greatest significance to this era is the material and knowledge system. Under the cover of County Magistrate Liu Huang and others, there is no problem in dealing with materials, but the establishment of the knowledge system cannot be stranded here. Fu Xiaoguya was very capable when he was in charge of the postal business last year. He is a very practical person, and he understands the lower class people of this era better than Li Ju. He has less conscience and bottom line than Li Ju, and he is much more efficient than Li Ju in doing things. Li Ju likes to reason with everyone, unless he is a beast in human clothing like Chen Zhangao, then it is worth Li Ju's killing. For ordinary small evil people, Li Ju always thinks that it is not surprising that such a living environment will produce any kind of bad people, and he is more willing to reason and persuade those who are disobedient. For example, when the postal industry just started, there were people who extorted money for damaged items, or there were short-sighted postmen who embezzled customers' packages. For example, the seeds of Li Yuan were still in the confidential stage, and were often stolen home and planted privately. After no harvest, they shamelessly came to blackmail Li Ju. Li Ju would think that it was because they had never read books, did not know the principles of being a human being, and their own system had not kept up, which gave them the opportunity to exploit loopholes. Li Ju's way of dealing with it was to punish them by copying the family rules, and then talk to them carefully and heartfeltly after copying, find the root of the problem and solve the problem from the source. Fu Xiaoguya was different. He got Li Ju's full permission, and was not afraid that Li Ju would think he was ungrateful and mean. He first made a strict restraint system, and when he encountered problems, he would do things according to the system, beat those who should be beaten, deduct money from those who should be deducted, and send those who should be sent to the government. Although it cannot be eradicated, it may be 10 times worse in places where Fusaoguya cannot see, but it is extremely effective in a short period of time, and the atmosphere is almost renewed. Li Ju knew that rewarding good and punishing evil is the simplest and crudest way, but he just couldn't bear to treat ordinary people. Fusaoguya volunteered to be a bad guy, and Li Ju only told him not to act recklessly because he held other people's lives in his hands and think about his past before doing things. Fusaogi still owed Li Ju a lot of debts, and he was willing to take over all the messes in Li Ju's hands. Li Ju took Fusaogi and Wang Dechen to clean up for more than a month, and finally sorted out everything. The heads and substitutes of various industries were all found, and the shifts were rearranged, and then all the chores were handed over to Fujiui. Fujiui has really made it today, and he is full of high spirits and confidence. He has finally thrown away the gloom of the past, and he is no longer as sharp as before. Instead, he often smiles, and has Li Ju's tolerant and kind style. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, Returning to the Grass. It is the busiest time of the year for crops. This year, there are several more imperial farms that have been awarded, and it is especially busy to test whether rice-based fish ponds are feasible. Li Ju waited for Fujiui to get started, and then entrusted all the family affairs to Fujiui, and asked Jufu, Huang Zhi, Wang Dechen, Wu Guanjia and others to assist in supervision. He took the mute to the imperial farm to monitor the new model of farming. After the imperial farm was awarded to Li Ju did not take a single ear of the harvest that year, but he kept all the farmers who were willing to stay. When the reward was in place last year, a small half of the tenants left and went to other imperial farms. Jiangnan is the place where dragons rise, and many lands belong to the royal family, especially the Furung Mountain to the west of Jinling. This piece of land has changed its surname, so naturally there are more lands that have not changed their surnames, so just move to another place. Later, when measuring the water level, matching fertilizers and controlling the temperature of the greenhouse, some farmers thought that Li Ju was messing around and left again. Now there are less than 10 households of the original tenants left in the whole Huangshuang. Li Ju later recruited some more people, and there are a total of 16 households and more than 40 people, which is much less than before. However, Li Ju equipped each household with oxen and mules, so there are enough people. If the weather is bad at harvest time, it is enough to recruit some temporary workers. The key to rice-based fish ponds is the water level. If it is too shallow, fish cannot be raised. If it is too deep, the rice will be drowned. At the same time, attention should be paid to the fertile soil and bacteria in the field to avoid insufficient fertilizer or infectious diseases. 2 glass greenhouses were built in Huangshuang, and the cost is still very high. Without the premise of a glass production line, the cost cannot be reduced at all. Labor is very cheap, but professional technical labor is very expensive. The coverage area of each greenhouse is only half an acre, and a water channel is dug inside to introduce hot water to increase the temperature when the temperature is too low. Various vegetables and relatively short fruit trees are planted in the greenhouse, as well as a small amount of grain, arranged from morning to night according to the farming time. Looking at the grain alone, the greenhouse starts raising seedlings half a month earlier than the outside. When the weather was still very cold, the land in the greenhouse had already been plowed. Li Ju selected a more careful family from the farmers, who rented the land, and entrusted the greenhouse to the 2 brothers of this family. Together with a student brought from Yufu, they kept an eye on the temperature and humidity of the greenhouse for 12 hours a day, just to get the proper record smoothly. In the future, when glass and even plastic are solved, large greenhouses can be set up as soon as possible. The 2 brothers of this family were originally surnamed Feng, and they were all people who stayed in the old Huangshuang. Most of the people who stayed were honest and cowardly, and these 2 brothers were also. The management of the Huangshan was not a tenancy relationship, but closer to the modern employee system, which was a relatively special production relationship. There was less exploitation in the Huangshan. Only the village head was a little powerful, but he would not be as harsh as the landlords outside. Most people who could farm for the Huangshan were relatively well off. The two brothers had married wives before, but they didn't expect that the two sisters-in-law would go there one after another. The Feng brothers used up all their savings to pay for the medicine soup, and they still haven't saved enough for the bride price to marry another wife. On the first day, when Li Ju came, he only told everyone to remember the situation in the field. He asked every day on the second and third days, but stopped asking from the fourth day onwards. On the 10th day, he suddenly asked everyone to hand in the records of the past 10 days. Some people were lucky and their records were incomplete. Some people are born careless and forget things. The Feng brothers were the ones who kept the most detailed and complete records among all the people, so Li Ju directly selected them. When the seedlings were raised in the greenhouse, Li Ju ordered another batch of grass carp and carp fry from the fishermen, and raised them in the pond. When the fry were a little bigger, the seedlings were transplanted, and the water was poured. The fry could be sent to the fields in batches. In addition to the fry, Li Ju also prepared a little crab fry, wanting to try to raise crabs in the rice fields. This year is probably another year of good weather and good harvests. At least before the rice seedlings were planted, the weather was very favorable. The greenhouse was the first to be moved. After the seedlings in the greenhouse had grown a lot taller, the fields outside also began to be planted. Half a month after the planting, the first batch of fish seedlings entered the field. In ancient times, insect pests and mildew were basically solved by manual labor. There was no situation where insecticides and fungicides poisoned the fish seedlings, so there was no arrangement for fish seedlings to be rotated. By the end of March, the crab seedlings also mixed into a small piece of rice field and grew happily and vigorously. Everything went very smoothly here. The farmers who were a little restless gradually recognized Li Ju's arrangements and plans, and no longer speculated randomly with doubts. While they were farming, they were forced by Li Ju to follow the agricultural students to take classes, and gradually connected their farming experience with scientific knowledge. The development stage of the seedlings, the demand for water, fertilizer, light, and heat, the matching principle of fish and crabs in rice fields. From suspicion to recognition to real understanding, they gradually grew into farmers who farm scientifically. At this time, Li Ju received a letter from Sanjiu. Sanjiu asked Jianan for a map, and marked several houses, shops, and hills that he liked on the map, asking Li Ju to make a decision. Sanjiu also explained the boundary issue of Yaochen Temple in the letter. Sanjiu's own idea was to lay the foundation, while continuing to try to contact the owner of the hillside. If the garden and house are all built, and people are recruited, but the land is still not available, it won't delay anything to buy other places. Li Ju didn't make a decision so quickly, but wrote back to ask Sanjiu to ask Yanan for a local hydrological record. If he had time, he could also ask the old people near each piece of land about the water levels of the two rivers in the dry and flood seasons of drought and flood years. The hills are very good, but it depends on whether the hydrological conditions are suitable. The principle of hydraulic machinery has been introduced in Qingshan County, so it doesn't make sense to return to human power in Jinling. For a city as large as Jinling, and such a developed trade system, hydraulic power is a basic requirement. If you are lucky enough to find a few physics talents, and get some good gum, maybe you can even create steam power. Unfortunately, physics is a bit more mysterious than biology, chemistry, medicine, and agronomy. There is still a certain market for introductory optics and mechanics, but if you go deeper into acceleration, kinetic energy, potential energy, and thermal energy, even Xiaolian will give up. Li Ju has not yet found someone willing to continue to move forward in physics. After discussing the next steps with Sanjiu, another matter soon came up. It turned out that a group of hired farmers from the original imperial farm who left at the end of last year had returned. They didn't dare to find Li Ju directly, so they asked the Feng brothers to ask privately if the farm was short of mansion workers, even if it was just for short-term work. When the Feng brothers went to Li Ju to relay the story, they said, "I heard from them that they really can't even eat, and they just want to get through this period of transition. We can think of ways to deal with future matters later." Chapter 272, Yu Yaoniang resigns. The farmer who left wanted to return to his hometown. The honest Feng brothers couldn't help blushing when they went to Li Ju to ask for mercy. Li Ju didn't think it was a big deal. It was just that it was easy to leave, but it was difficult to come back. It was well known that when Li Yuan hired people, it would first hire the poorest ones after confirming that the other party was suitable. Some people knew Li Ju's temper and ran to the gate of Li Yuan to sell themselves to bury their parents. These things were not Li Ju's responsibility now. Wang Dechen and the village head put them here, and naturally they chose the people. There were enough people in the village, but who would complain about not having enough people? If you can pick out a genius who is suitable for learning other skills, you will find a treasure. Wang Dechen was already familiar with this job. Although the village head was selecting people for the first time, he knew how to cooperate with Wang Dechen, so things were done very smoothly. After they selected the people, they gave 2 feet of cloth and a basket of grain to the others who were not recruited, and sent them away. For the remaining people, Li Ju redistributed the work according to the booklet prepared by Wang Dechen. Some stayed to continue farming, while others were sent to other industries to work part-time. Anyway, they just had to survive the food shortage. Since they just wanted to earn enough food, why did they care what kind of work they did? Among the newly recruited people, there were many who fled from other places. They were lucky enough to get a job among the farmers, who had returned to their hometowns. Li Ju selected a few people from other places from the book, especially those from Yu County. Li Ju had a psychological shadow on Yu County. From these people, Li Ju learned about the changes that had taken place in Yu County. After the new county magistrate arrived last year, he used the slack time in farming to repair the road between Yu County and Qingshan County, making it very convenient for merchants to travel. Various technologies and cheap goods from Qingshan County quickly expanded to Yu County. The wealthy businessmen in Yu County also realized the strength of Li Yuan's industries such as textile factories, especially the giants in the textile industry. As early as last year, when they went out to sea for trade, they discovered that Li Yuan's cloth was of good quality and low price. This year, they formed a group to purchase some quotas for textile machines and have begun to prepare land for planting cotton and building textile factories. They needed both land and population, so naturally they thought of attacking the weak civilians. These people were just the first group to be defeated. Of course, the Yu people who drifted to the Huangsang area did not know what was going on behind the scenes. They only knew that their land was lost inexplicably. Li Ju understood as soon as he heard it. The era of the first generation of enclosure movement in Dayang had arrived. Although he had expected this day to come, he did not expect it to come so early. Obviously, the wealthy merchants in other places had only gone to the step of changing to cotton, so why did the wealthy merchants in Yu County directly enter the step of depriving farmers of their land? Li Ju couldn't figure it out, so he had to put it aside and wait until he had time to go to Yu County to see it in person. As for whether to let Yi Gong and others postpone the order and scheduling of the spinning machine, Li Ju hesitated for a moment, but finally did not intervene. The mule machine is a more advanced productivity. He can limit the purchase volume of wealthy merchants in a region in order to ease conflicts and reduce the bankruptcy of civilians, but he does not want to forcibly hinder the development of productivity in order to reduce conflicts. Instead of that, it would be better to find a way to establish a new economic system based on cheap cloth, which might be faster and more in line with the law of development. After asking about the situation, Li Ju frowned and asked them to go to their respective places to work. He continued to take care of the rice fields and the fish and crab seedlings, while copying his books and putting the economic system on the agenda. A few days later, another thing happened. Yu Yaoniang came to visit and wanted to resign as the director of the textile factory. This was very unexpected to Li Ju, but Li Ju could do nothing about it. Li Ju had high hopes for Yu Yaoniang. He hoped that she would use her intelligence and wisdom to make the factory prosperous, and also hoped to use her gender advantage to attract more women who were far away from the land. to join the textile industry, take the lead in entering the factory and become workers. Originally, these two things were progressing well. With the leading role of Yu Yaoniang, Zhang Zhaoxi and others, many women near the barren mountains and women in more remote places tried to take the first step. So Li Ju was a little angry at Yaoniang's plan to resign and return to her family. Yaoniang had no choice. 3 months after her marriage, she got pregnant. He Gong originally thought that his daughter should not show up in public and that she should return to her family and take good care of her husband and children. However, County Magistrate Wu didn't care about whether she was at home or not, but he attached great importance to the child. Both her father and husband hoped that she would put aside her affairs outside and concentrate on taking care of the baby. Yaoniang's temper softened a lot after marriage, and she was no longer as stubborn as she was before, so she was somewhat tempted. County Magistrate Wu was almost 40 years old when he had his first child, and he couldn't let him be willful. He valued Yaoniang's right to speak in the Li family, but this right to speak was based on Yaoniang's irreplaceable position in the first textile factory. Now Yaoniang has thoroughly understood the blueprints, and she can still rebuild the textile factory. After returning to the north with him, Li Ju didn't object, and Yaoniang couldn't manage the affairs of the first textile factory. After she went to the north, Li Ju had to find someone to take over sooner or later, and now it was just a few years earlier. Li Ju had to agree. It was because of old Wu's age and his family background that he naturally valued his offspring more. It was not easy for Yaoniang to get a good son-in-law, so Li Ju had nothing to say about giving in. It was just that it was not easy to find someone to replace Yaoniang's current duties. It was easy to just manage the factory, but the difficulty was that Yaoniang's inklines and drawings were beautiful, and the mule machine assembly line of the textile factory was very dependent on drawings. Mule machines sold to the outside world must be equipped with very detailed drawings. This technical job was not done well by He Gong, and only Yaoniang could handle it. Li Ju had no choice but to call Wang Dechen and ask him to entrust Yu Fu and Huang Zhi and others to find some people who were good at drawing machine drawings. In fact, the most suitable person for copying is Xiu Sample Zhang, but Xiu Sample Zhang's intellectual problem greatly affected his understanding of the parts of the drawing. It was no problem for him to copy the drawing, but it would be a big problem for him to combine or disassemble it. Li Ju needed a good understanding and spatial imagination, and he also needed someone who could not paint on his own. He wanted a craftsman, rather than a painter. But Huang Zhi and Yu Fu were stumped. They really had no common people. The lowest class of people Yu Fu came into contact with were only farmers who grew crops. Above them were his students. Those who could paint were all painters with their own understanding of painting, and those who could not paint could not paint. Huang Zhi did not even have much contact with farmers. The farming at home was taken care of by the housekeeper and others. But when Li Ju wanted someone, they had to bite the bullet and help find him. Not only the two of them, but also Wu County Magistrate, who felt a little guilty about Li Ju, Zhao County Magistrate, who felt he had gotten on Li Ju's car, Liu Manager and Dyeing and Weaving Chen, who had to travel to other places every year, were also trying to find talents. Dyeing and Weaving Chen and old Liu, the shopkeepers, patted their chests loudly. Even if we can't find it, I can force my kid to change his career. Dyeing and Weaving Chen relies on weaving for a living, and old Liu's current family business is probably based on Li Ju's exclusive supply. They are motivated by profit. County Magistrate Wu and County Magistrate Zhao are purely helping, but Qingshan County is so small that the talents that should be discovered have basically been discovered. Everyone still has high hopes for the two merchants who have been outside for many years and have seen a lot. Chapter 273, Get the money and buy more. Yu Yaoniang's temporary withdrawal caused some trouble to Li Ju, so Li Ju had to immediately promote two capable men from the Li Garden to temporarily replace him. The woman was Gizzy and the man was Azu. Azu had been running the model house for 2 years and had a good reputation among customers and business circles. Li Ju also felt that he could not let him be buried in the reception and farewell, so he could take this opportunity to let him try to be independent. Azu went there happily, and the model house was handed over to Jetting. Li Ju made a rough estimate of the talent echelon, and then the disadvantages came. After Yu Yaoniang left, he successively transferred Sanjiu, Azhu, and Gizi, as well as Lao Shan, who came to Huangshuang to be a landowner. The people below could naturally take over. Even if Jeteng Yaoniang and others were withdrawn, there were still some young boys who could be used if they dug below. Azhu and others were all smart and capable talents. In just 5 or 6 days, they took over various things smoothly. The textile factory was operating as usual, the mule looms were still being shipped as scheduled, the textile workers were working as usual, and the model houses in the city were still welcoming guests. Li Ju did not need to worry about it anymore. Li Ju watched for a few days and saw that it was still like this, so he turned his attention back to the rice-based fish ponds in the Imperial Farm. At the same time, in Jinling, Sanjiu was running back and forth between the various courtyards and the warehouses where the archives and documents of the officials were stored every day. On his days off, he would go to the villages near the land to be viewed to inquire about the hydrological environment. He was so busy that he could not help but attract gossip from other colleagues. But behind the gossip was jealousy. How could he not be jealous? We are all women, and we all depend on others to live. But Sanjiu can be her own boss, and she can choose a place to buy a house and put it in her own name. This is a blessing that other women can't even ask for. As servants, Sanjiu has her own status, and her status is recorded in the population book. She is a legitimate and honest householder. Even if other people have thousands of silver and gold in their hands, they are all the money of the master's family, who can see that things are in their own name. After running for more than 2 months, the decoration of the courtyard was completed. It was heard that the princess's carriage would also be on the date. Sanjiu and her small team won a generous bonus and left the welcoming project. The land on the other side was almost understood. There was still no news on the hilltop next to Yaochen Temple. Li Ju and Sanjiu discussed it and reluctantly decided on 2 other mountainous lands. In addition to the mountainous land, Sanjiu also bought a house in the city. Li Ju himself was willing to live in the suburbs, but there must be a house in the city, otherwise it would be very inconvenient for Li Ju to deal with the local powerful families. The mansion was found through Eugen's help. The previous owner was a senior official of the Salt administration. This senior official had just retired. The mansion was repaired but no one had moved in yet. He was convicted of a crime while in office and sentenced to confiscation of property. So this beautiful mansion was confiscated and sold. The locals are somewhat superstitious. Those who can afford it don't want to buy a house with bad feng shui, and those who don't mind it can't afford it. The government in charge of the sale didn't dare to lower the price casually. Sanjiu originally wanted to look at the property for herself and her daughter. When she saw this large garden, she felt that she would lose a lot if she didn't buy it. She wrote a letter to Li Ju to ask for mercy and asked Eugen to mediate on her behalf. After several twists and turns, Li Ju finally got it. This mansion is not like the big courtyard in Qingshan County, but a formal large garden, covering an area of 49 acres. There is no shortage of rockery, ponds, trees, and flower beds in the garden, and the architectural decorations are all very beautiful Suzhou style. After Sanjiu bought it, he took some time to clean it up and renovate it according to the simple and spacious style that Li Ju liked. Li Ju didn't want to buy this place at first, but seeing that Sanjiu liked it very much, and he was also very interested in Jiangnan Gardens, he acquiesced. He paid 6 carts of various gems and glassware, and the price was 160,000 taels of silver in exchange for this garden. Other things are fine, but the few glass windows sent by Li Ju really blinded the eyes of the local officials. After buying them, they were quickly arranged for the princess's courtyard. The glass puzzles with various patterns such as peacocks, phoenixes, the use of dragon and phoenix patterns by the people is not against the rules and is not considered presumptuous, and peonies are full of light and color, which is spectacular. Even the Spurs couldn't help but pay for 2 iris patterns to put at the entrance of his garden. When the weather is clear, the sun shines on the colorful small glass grids and sprinkles magnificent patterns on the ground, which makes him stand out. Yaonan couldn't help it either. He bought a stained glass window with a round rose pattern that could be assembled into a dome and used it in the newly built shed in the garden. When Li Ju learned that he liked this thing, he gave him 4 smaller stained glass windows with 4 seasons themes. The stained glass windows were inspired by Meng Xianwang and his team's research on flat glass and glass greenhouses, because in the final analysis, the stained glass windows and the greenhouse he is building now are the same, both of which are frames spliced with small pieces of glass. There are some localized stained glass windows in Li Ju's warehouse, with all kinds of patterns, and the craftsmanship is much more advanced than the best and most exquisite versions that Meng Xianwang and his team can currently make. Meng Xianwang and his team can only make white, blue, and green glass. Other colors belong to the category of colored glaze, which is very different from glass. With the current technology, the stained glass windows made by Meng Xianwang and his team only have a simple and light appearance, far from achieving a colorful effect. Therefore, the stained glass windows that Li Ju found in the warehouse can be sold at a sky-high price, and Yanan feels a little distressed when he buys one back. Li Ju couldn't bear to take money from the people, so he was unwilling to sell his treasures to the people, but he had absolutely no psychological pressure to take money from the government. Money is only considered money when it is in circulation, and it is useless if it rots in the warehouse. He used modern artificial gems and glass products to deal with the government, and I don't know how many people the money saved could save. In addition to this big house, Sanjiu also took the initiative to buy 6 shops, 7 small houses, 3 connected restaurants and a large area of slums on the outskirts of the city. 3 of the shops and 3 houses were bought for herself. She spent all her savings and owed Li Ju a roll of carbone lace. The rest were bought for Li Ju. She calculated that if Li Ju's property was transferred to Jinling, it would take almost this much space to accommodate it, so she insisted on buying it. The list that Li Jiu finally got listed the specific information of all the industries, their locations and environments, usage plans, furniture, plants, people, etc. It made his scalp numb. I didn't realize Sanjiu was such a good bargainer. How many cars of glass can be exchanged for so much? Is glass really that valuable? Wang Dechen, who needed to manage the accounts of all the industries, replied, I think it's a loss, mainly because time is too tight. So many glass windows and gems and pearls have to be sold in 2 months. The price must be a bit unfair. If you give Madame Zhao 3 years to slowly sell them, I guarantee that you can sell them for 3 times the price. Li Jiu shook his head. That's not necessary. These are just dead things. London talents are the most precious wealth. In a few years, glass will be sold at a very low price. I'm afraid those who bought the stained glass windows will cry to death. Wang Dechen said, that won't happen. You don't understand their idea of being one step ahead. As long as you can show it off one day earlier than others, it's worth it. Chapter 274, Sanjiu persuading medicine girl. The word show off has a fatal temptation for many people. The good clothes, good satin, and Kwazang soap of Li Yuan can open up the market thanks to these 2 words. The renovation of the furnishings made by the welcoming princess this time was done at no cost in pursuit of a beautiful, interesting, elegant and precious effect. There may be a factor of showing off in it. The North and the South have been competing with each other for years. From food, clothing and daily necessities to the imperial examinations, there is no comparison. Even prostitutes compose songs to mock each other. If it weren't for the rise of the royal family in Jiangnan, I'm afraid the dispute between the North and the South would be even more intense. Sanjiu successfully completed the task and handed over the property to Yanan and the shopkeeper of Liuji goods store. He refused to stay for a day and returned to Qingshan Liyuan without stopping to complete the transaction with Li Ju. It can be seen that Sanjiu is very satisfied and proud of this trip to Jinling, and there is a bit of pride in his expression. It is indeed worthy of pride. A widow from a small county town, who only runs a clothing store, actually took on the order of clothing and soft furnishings needed to welcome the princess, and made them more beautiful than those of the wealthy families in Jinling, and won unanimous praise from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and other places. When Sanjiu was still in Jinling, many people wrote to Li Ju to ask if he could give up his love. They were willing to pay a lot of money to hire Yu Yaoniang, etc. It is very difficult to get such a result. The style of the royal family must be satisfied, and the emperor's frugality must also be taken seriously. It must be grand, but not too extravagant and decadent. It must have the strong northern style and the characteristics of the south of the Yangtze River. It is a test of the aesthetics and design ability of the person in charge to have all four corners. Li Ju believed that he could not do it, even if he had a lot of cultural relics to copy. Li Ju was very curious about what Sanjiu's ideas were. When Sanjiu and Yaoniang talked about their experiences in Jinling, Li Ju also stayed to listen. In the final analysis, we still have to think clearly about the essence. The Shan family is simple and true, and they can be extravagant but not extravagant, rather than being unable to cook without rice. So this idea should also be used for decoration. Can be this way, but not that way, which reflects a confident attitude. When it comes to the specific design draft, it is Jiangnan for use and Beijing for the body. The princess is definitely more adapted to northern furniture and objects, but I use the Jiangnan style for the appearance, which is novel and not abrupt. For example, the Kang table, Kang screen, soft curtains, cloud stepping shoes, climbing shoes, cloaks, raincoats, and clogs for going out are all made according to the daily life of the people in the imperial capital, but covered with a layer of woven and embroidered leather to highlight our orientation without making the princess feel unfamiliar. But I also arranged some of our Jiangnan customs in it, such as incense, our recently made lanyard skirts, crystal curtains with burnt patterns, bamboo, and rattan utensils, and I also replaced the decorative 8 treasure flowers with our fashionable filigree bottle wrapped flowers, dried flowers, and velvet flowers. In addition to these, there are also new things from the master, such as colored windows and enamel vases, which are amazing. When I submitted the draft that day, they all said that I put it in a mess, but the next day I saw them secretly adding the filigree enamel ornaments I came up with to their own homes. What do you think of their behavior? Sanjiu said excitedly, while Li Ju looked thoughtful. Fuzaoguya, Yaoniang Izzy and other girls, as well as the old men such as Chuzan and Shiba, chatted all day and did not leave until dinner in the evening. Sanjiu was talking until her mouth was dry. When she turned around and saw that Li Ju had no expression on his face, she took the initiative to ask, "Master, did I say something wrong?" Li Ju just shook his head and said, "No, you said it very well. It is true that one should look at a man with new eyes after 3 days of absence. You have done so many things in Jinling by yourself. You are very capable. I'm happy for you. I just thought of something else. Your idea is right and worth emulating." Sanjiu smiled and said, "Then why didn't you give me a good look? I was scared and thought that something was not done." Of course, Sanjiu was just joking. How she did her job, others might not know, but she should know it herself. Fortunately, she has fulfilled her mission. Li Ju said, "You are doing the best job. How could I doubt you? You take a rest for 2 days first. I will give you some very important work later." By the way, when Madam He got married, it was you who helped her manage the textile factory, and you two have a good relationship. She has good news now. Remember to go and see her. It would be best to use the high-spirited Sanjiu to arouse Yaoniang's fighting spirit, otherwise it would be a pity to have such a talent return just like that. Sanjiu didn't know that Yaoniang had already given up. When she heard that her good sister had good news, she was overjoyed. "This is really great. Doesn't it count as a double happiness for our family? Although Madam He is not in our family, she is a daughter of our family after all. Our family is also half of Madam He's family. Madam He's child is of course our Li Yuan's grandson, and the county magistrate is the master's brother. The addition of a child to his family means the addition of a nephew to the master. Isn't it a double happiness?" Li Ju waved his hand. "You go now. It won't be too late to come back and tell me whether you are happy or not after you have seen the people." Sanjiu was full of doubts. In the evening, she selected some rare and fresh gifts from the various gifts she brought back from Jinling and put them into a beautiful gift box. The next morning, the errand boy sent the invitation, and at noon she went to the official residence behind the county government office to congratulate Yaoniang. Yaoniang had changed into a woman's dress, which was very simple. There was only a small red gold phoenix hairpin on her head, and her hair was combed neatly. She looked like a quiet and gentle bride. When congratulating her, Sanjiu learned from Yaoniang's hesitation that Yaoniang had resigned from her job at the textile factory and was concentrating on protecting her pregnancy at home. If she hadn't remembered that Yaoniang's husband was a county magistrate, Sanjiu would have said confused at that time. Sanjiu was different from other girls in the Lee family. Not only did she know very well what it would be like for a woman to meet a bad person, she also knew very well that the logic behind this situation was that it was difficult for a woman to make money independently. So she always thought that Yaoniang was very lucky. Yaoniang had parents who loved her since she was born, and she was not married until she was 26 years old, and her parents didn't say anything about her. Later, when she arrived at Lee Garden, Yaoniang went straight into her career without any twists and turns, unlike Sanjiu or any other person in Lee Garden who suffered first before finding a chance to breathe in Lee Garden. Is Yaoniang's family so busy that she has to devote 12 hours a day to housework? That may not be the case. County Magistrate Wu was very busy, leaving early and returning late every day, and it didn't take up too much of Yaoniang's time. The Wu family is a simple family with few people and few things to do. It is not difficult for Yaoniang to take care of both ends. So Sanjiu can't understand why Yaoniang would give up her career and withdraw herself into the family. What if something unexpected happens in the future? Yaoniang and Zhao Sanjiu have talked about this topic privately before. Yaoniang could still excuse herself when she resigned from Li Ju, but she had no confidence at all when facing Zhao Sanjiu. Yaoniang could guess Sanjiu's opinion and smiled bitterly. Good girl, I dare not refute anything. It's really scary to say something. I'm in charge of the factory outside. All kinds of unpleasant words can be put on my master, and dirty water is poured out one basin after another. Not only does it make people feel distressed, but I'm also afraid that it will implicate him. You should know the situation of his family, and that doesn't allow me to behave out of line. Zhao Sanjiu waved his hands to fan the wind, and at least he calmed down. Sanjiu could understand Yaoniang's embarrassment and difficulties. She was different from Li Ju in this respect. It was difficult for Li Ju to think about the affairs of the inner house. Magistrate Wu is a bastard of a big family, and he also holds an official position. It is indeed much more difficult for him to be his principal wife than for ordinary people. So you just let it go? Our lives are at stake, and our good or bad depends on our husbands, not only on his character, but also on his lifespan. If we don't have money and people in our hands, it really won't work. Chapter 275. The princess is here. Of course, Yaoniang was reluctant to give up her property. That was the starting line she had finally waited for, the same as her father and her fellow apprentices. But, she touched her belly. The child was only 3 months old, and had no sense of existence. She still felt it was unreal. Yaoniang said, fortunately, Mr. Lee was kind. I left first. He gave me an extra dowry, which I have used to buy land. Mr. Lee also gave me dividends from the share of the factory. This is something that no one else can take away. Let's take things one step at a time in the future. Giving birth is like going through the gates of hell. I don't know if I will still be alive by this time next year. Yaoniang was infinitely disappointed. Sanjiu could see that she did not give up the textile factory, but just bowed to reality. Sanjiu had no choice but to comfort her with kind words. Yaoniang invited Sanjiu to have lunch with her. Sanjiu declined twice, but couldn't, so he stayed and had lunch with her. Yaoniang's biological mother was visiting the Wu family, taking care of her daughter's daily life. She was very satisfied with Yaoniang's current situation, and said several times, it's more important for a girl to get married and be a wife to enjoy life. Who would care about her when she is busy outside? Our master is so good. He doesn't even have a maid at home. The only little maid was bought by Yaoniang after she got pregnant. Even the empress in the palace has a few maids who climb into the bed. Yaoniang secretly talked about it several times, but Yaoniang always stopped talking, but she would accidentally bring it up again. Fortunately, Sanjiu had heard it many times and didn't think it was a big deal. She finished her meal and left with a smile. She didn't have a family to worry about, and she only had a daughter. She was more independent than herself. No one would stop her when she ran around outside. But Yaoniang was different. She had parents and parents-in-law after getting married, so we couldn't just look at her retreat and ignore her difficulties. Thinking of this, Sanjiu put aside the disappointment of learning that Yaoniang had just resigned and returned home, but she was amused and sad about her mother's vigilance. She could hear that his mother had a voiceover today saying that County Magistrate Wu had no intention of taking a concubine and did not like beauty. Whether the starting point was to be afraid of her or to show off, it was all for the good of her daughter as a mother. Sanjiu could understand, but she felt a little uncomfortable being implied like this. It seemed that she should go less often in the future, but there was probably no chance to go. The land and house in Jinling were bought, and Li Ju would not move out for a year or two, but she had to go to Jinling first to build a textile factory, and she could not come back for a few days a year. She had no feelings for Qingshan City, no ties, only the first half of her life, and this life was only about Li Ju and Xiaolian. When Li Ju and Xiaolian also moved to Jinling, she would probably never come back again. Sanjiu returned to Li Garden to rest. Her trip to Jinling was considered a business trip, and she could adjust her vacation when she was on a business trip, so she could rest happily for a long time. Li Ju has been to the border of Huangshuang again and again. Although it is not far away and can be reached in more than half an hour by bicycle, Li Ju finds it annoying and simply lives there. The mute and a village head transferred from the barren mountain followed him. In addition, there were only the kittens and puppies that Jeteng gave to Li Ju 2 years ago. Xiaolian and Yaoniang wanted to go, but Li Ju would not let them. Now, only when there is work to wash and mend can Yaoniang take the opportunity to visit Li Ju in Huangshuang. Sanjiu, however, is a bit restless. She wandered around Li Garden 3 times without doing anything, looking at the textile factory, the barren mountain, the music clothing store, and the house. Everything is in order and there is no place to intervene. She simply asked Li Ju for power and went to Jinling in advance to supervise the construction of the factory and recruitment of workers. Li Ju advised her to take a rest, but Sanjiu just said that she was really a hard-working person. After all, she left after she had appointed people. It is a good thing to be ambitious, which is better than being forced to quit halfway. With such a person watching the outside world, he can find time to do his own business. Everything went smoothly in the greenhouse and rice-based fish ponds. The seedlings were beautiful, and the survival rate of fish and crabs was not low. There would be some problems every now and then. Either the seedlings were wilted, or the roots were rotten, or the fish turned over, and the crabs lifted their legs. Li Ju took the time to read books and make up for the lessons, and then called together experienced farmers and the agricultural college to discuss together. These problems were generally solved smoothly. If he had to distract himself from other industries, the progress here would not be so normal. During this period, Li Ju also recruited some very experienced farmers one after another. When asked, they were basically fleeing from famine in other places. The situation was similar. They had no land and no food, and had no choice but to leave their hometown. If it weren't for the national policy of Dayang, in any land of fish and rice, 10 acres of land for growing grain could only be allocated 1 acre of land for cotton, sesame, and oil, and there would be more people fleeing from famine. Li Ju arranged for the farmers he recruited later to change their careers or enter more subdivided fields, such as specializing in composting, specializing in the cultivation of fish and crab seedlings, or to follow Fu Dai and Fu Niang to hatch chicks and ducklings. There is a lot of room for horizontal development in the agricultural industry. If there are more people, they can be thrown into sideline businesses. Even if the breeding industry is saturated, it can still be expanded in the direction of varieties. Li Ju has not yet brought out peppers, sugar making, and salt making methods. The fish and crabs are fat and full in the imperial farm, and the rice ears have grown. Some varieties in the greenhouse have even entered the harvest period. The Jinling city has finally welcomed the princess and her husband who they have been waiting for a long time. The road from the ferry to the spring and autumn palace has been cleaned, and soil has been spread as a mat. People have been dispersed, and the guards and local government officials are patrolling on both sides of the road. Rich and idle people have come to the tall buildings along the way to see the wonders, and Sanjiu is no exception. She also has a monocular telescope in her hand, which Li Ju gave her before she went out. If you want to see the princess, you will definitely not be able to see it. The princess's phoenix carriage is covered tightly, and even the shadow of the person cannot be seen, let alone her appearance. The princess's maids basically wear men's clothes, and their temperament is very outstanding, but they are inevitably stained with dust. The prince consort was also riding in a carriage, so he could not be seen. But his carriage was far behind, far away from the princess. With the help of a telescope, Sanjiu could see the specific situation in the distance, the details of the carriage, and the people's clothing, which were completely different from the style of Jiangnan. In fact, the speed of fashion change in Jiangnan was much faster than that in the north, but it was not so obvious in men's clothing. Moreover, when the princess traveled, the staff basically wore standard official uniforms, including the palace maids. Standard uniforms did not have so many tricks to play with, so they looked okay. It was not until everyone changed into their own private clothes that the huge difference between the two places could be seen. The princess carriage went directly into the spring and autumn palace. The palace was newly renovated. It was the end of summer, and Jiangnan was still covered with grass and trees, but there were fewer flowers. People cut the edges of silken gauze into various patterns, and tied them on the branches, which looked colorful. The phoenix carriage did not stop until it reached the triple gate, and was replaced by a large sedan chair with a light gauze canopy as the top. Princess Chengyang got off the car and let the local ladies who were guarding and following her meet her. Chengyang looked like her father, but she didn't have a fairy-like appearance. She was only a little beautiful, and her beauty was even a little dull. However, there was a spirit between her eyebrows and eyes, and her demeanor was very dignified. She was indeed not comparable to ordinary women. The ladies were inevitably a little disappointed, and they greeted the princess in turn. Chengyang said no thanks, and got on the car to the main hall of her residence. Everyone hurriedly followed her, so that she could sit down and chat with the princess after she changed her clothes and made up. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.